Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 661 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And Ukraine has launched a mass drone attack. They were flying around everywhere, I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. And we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And we have huge news all over, from mass drone attacks not only being launched by Ukraine, but also being launched by the Russian Federation simultaneously, to the Russians trying to build a brand new naval base 500 miles away from Sevastopol, because Sevastopol is now almost unusable, to the massive amounts of Russian losses that have been taken in between the battlefields of Bakhmut and Avdiivka. The news today is huge, and also there has been the suggestion, at least, that there may be Ukrainian forces pushing on out of Krynky again, or a Russian counterattack directed at Krynky was completely wiped out. I also have to say that, surprisingly, the Enforcer channel has survived another day. YouTube has decided not to bring down the hammer on us, unlike other channels, and so we continue to keep on going and keep on putting out the news. And I feel like it's very important, especially with the current kind of environment and atmosphere that's on YouTube right now, that we assure y'all that as long as this channel stands, we will always be on air every single night, 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, always covering this news of what's going on in Ukraine. We will never stop unless if we are forced to. I see a lot of y'all talking about the one channel in particular, Warthog Defense, that was pretty much banned off the platform without any warning, and that is something that is always on our minds at this point, and is something that has really shaken up the entire Ukraine war community, and especially the Lee Spring Army. If it can happen to Warthog Defense, it really can happen to anybody. I assure y'all and promise y'all that no matter what, as long as this channel stands, as long as we are not banned, we will continue to cover the news of this war every day until the end of the war itself. But moving on from that and on into the breaking news of the night, we're going to start off big and then we're going to go small. So starting off with the big bit of news, we did hear that apparently a new naval base is under construction right now, 500 miles away from Sevastopol. So we whip out a ruler and we go to Sevastopol and then we measure about 500 miles away. It is most likely, well, dang, I don't know where it would be, because there isn't really anything that is exactly 500 miles away. It might be in Sochi, because that's what the caption says, is around 500 miles away. But if we look at the satellite picture, this is supposedly a new Russian naval base that is being constructed at the moment. Sadly, I was not able to have this geolocated before a stream, because some emergencies came up before the stream that I had to address, and so I didn't have the time to be as thorough with this one and figure out exactly where this may be. Nevertheless, it does appear to be a fairly new installation, and we can see what appears to be the beginning of a Russian barracks being created here for the sailors that may begin to use this naval base. We can also see here on the left side, it appears that there are some coastal patrol boats that are already stationed in this area, and not only that, a couple of other interesting things as well. A lot of coal heaps, which are very rarely seen at naval dockyards and harbors, which may be suggesting that this port is still in its infancy, and some coal-carrying ships or coal-fueled ships, which are incredibly rare in the modern world, and largely archaic by almost all measures, may possibly be using this port, although that is probably a massive stretch. I've also seen Rob McDonald say that this is somewhere inside of Georgia, most likely west Abkhazan, right over here. So let's take a look really quickly while my voice cracks like there is no tomorrow, and let me go see what we have along the Georgian border, or more so the West Abkhazan border, which is an illegally controlled part of Georgia that is a puppet state of the Russian Federation. But as we move down the coastline, we're not seeing anything that looks like this port yet, and I believe we're almost out of the territory of West Abkhazan. Actually, we're about halfway, and we can see that we're moving on down, and I'm not really seeing anything particularly of note at the moment. If any of y'all were able to geolocate this, share it with... Wait a minute. We found it. Here it is. It is the Juk-Murray Coal Harbor. And how close is this to the nation of Georgia itself, the officially controlled part? It is probably about 30 to 40 miles away. And we can see that apparently there is some kind of a facility that exists here. We can see some kind of dormitories, apartment buildings, or barracks here. And we can also see that even in this satellite picture, there are some smaller patrol vessels that appear to be stationed here. Also, I can't, well, that looks like a tree, possibly. I was about to be, I can't tell if that's damage to the building already in this satellite picture, but this appears to be the naval harbor in question. from the information that we're getting, the Russians are apparently trying to build some kind of a usable naval harbor outside of the attack range of Ukrainian drones and missiles that the Russian Black Sea Fleet can use. I have a feeling that this is probably a stopgap measure or a temporary one, considering, for the large part, this is in West Abkhazan, which is unofficially a unofficial nation, to put it the best way possible. So we're probably not going to see this as the permanent one. The permanent base, if they ever made one outside of Sevastopol, is mostly going to be in Novorossiysk, although it's still going to be very expensive for the Russians to try and undertake that. And not only that, it's probably going to be very difficult as well, because the Russians don't really have the kind of infrastructure or abilities that they had during Soviet times when these ports were constructed, like Novorossiysk and Sevastopol. But moving on from that news, it is interesting to see that they may be trying to use this as a naval base, but we'll be waiting to see how that really goes for them. And also, let me move that right down there, so that way we know exactly where it is on the map. Moving on from that into other big Russian news, it appears that inside of the city of Astrakhan, which is on the very end of the Volga River, which enters into the beautiful Caspian Sea, it appears that someone got a little angry. And Matthew, when I say angry, they got a little angry and hangry. You know what I mean?
Got a little hangry, they're a little hungry out here, you know?
Man, they got a little hungry, and apparently hungry for bureaucrats. They set the administrative building on fire, and it looks like the fire was pretty severe. Here's the clip.
Wait, the Russians have a fire department?
It's the fire brigade.
I can't believe it.
And we can see that the fire has ravaged at least half the administrative building in Astrakhan. We see them trying to continue to control the fire as best as possible. Someone was smoking. That's it, put it that way.
You know, I was fully expecting when I saw the Russians having a fire department that you were going to see the clowns sliding down the ladder and smashing those little like plastic flowers that those clowns use like in the fires and stuff like that.
Dude,
oh man, I can't believe they actually have a working fire department.
Dude, the Russians, whenever they get like a call for a fire, they just go, "Don't worry, I'm on my way," and then they grab their nose and squeeze, and all you hear is, and then they get in the fire truck and they go. But anyways, what we can get from this is that partisan attacks are still happening throughout a large part of the Russian Federation. And apparently they're getting a little bit more brazen. We rarely ever get to see civil administration buildings getting hit, which are the Russian equivalent to a town hall. Rarely do we ever see those hit. It's usually conscription offices, electrical relays, or signal boxes on major rail corridors. We rarely ever get to see anything like this happen, and especially in a city like Astrakhan. Astrakhan is one of the more understated Russian towns out there, but Astrakhan is actually a fairly important one. Right at the very base of the Volga River, Astrakhan is the Russian equivalent to the city of Kherson for Ukraine. It serves almost the exact same purpose and was really the gateway for their trade with all of the other former Soviet republics and also Iran, which is why we assume a decent amount of the waterborne transports heading to Russia from Iran, which provide a decent amount of munitions and arms, are going to, which is Astrakhan, or they are taking the railroad through Iran, through Azerbaijan, and then into Russia. One or the other. But nevertheless, it is pretty wild to see that the city administration building halfway burned down. But you know what's even more interesting is that much like many Russian towns of olden times that have existed since about the 16th and 17th centuries, Astrakhan has a Kremlin. And you know, it's kind of a little bit of a misnomer when people say the Kremlin in Moscow, kind of as a quick little side note. A lot of people take that as, you know, that is just the Kremlin. There is no other Kremlin. It's like the U.S. Capitol building, although there are other Capitol buildings in the United States. What's really interesting about that, though, is that Astrakhan really does have a Kremlin. It has a Kremlin wall and everything like that. It's not red. It's actually white. And I believe the real Kremlin in Moscow was also white for a good bit, I think, until the communists took over, and then I think they were the ones to paint it red, or it was painted red No, actually, I'm completely mistaken on that. I think the Moscow Kremlin was red for a very long time. I remember at one point it was white, though, but then someone ordered to have it painted red, but it was before the communists did take over. Nevertheless, they have a Kremlin as well, so next time you hear that the Russians are getting orders from the Kremlin, you never know. It could be some crazy homeless tweaker selling hot dogs inside the Astrakhan Kremlin. You just never know.
I looked up what the definition of Kremlin was, just out of curiosity, and it says a citadel within a Russian town.
It's pretty much a castle. It's like the Russian equivalent of a castle. And what's, not to like rabbit hole y'all too much about Kremlins, but like Western Europe had castles, which were a lot smaller in scale, also were just hell to fight against, because you pretty much have to besiege them. There was really no way to effectively get in a castle unless you besieged them for months or years. The Kremlins were similar, but the Kremlins were designed for the flatter territory of the Russian steppe, and also the Ukrainian steppe as well, because the Ukrainians also have a lot of Kremlins. But these were kind of like produced for the kind of environment they were in, which is really cool, because you see an entire different kind of defensive structure, defensive fortification coming out of the requirements of the Russian steppe. But nevertheless, this is apparently Russia's plan B. if things go bad in Moscow, they move to the Astrakhan Kremlin, or any other Kremlin in any other city. But moving on from Astrakhan, big news to hear about a city administration building getting burned halfway to the ground, because it is showing that apparently the Partisans are still very active, and also they may even be getting more daring with their attacks as time keeps going by. But y'all know we have even bigger news to cover and bigger fish to fry. And there are no bigger fish than the ones that are inside of the Dnipro River. These fish are quite large, helped out by the radiation that was deposited into the Dnipro River by the Chernobyl nuclear power plant explosion, which fed from the Pripyat River, which is a tributary into the Dnipro, and then flowed on down. The fish have gotten pretty swole. But not only have they gotten swole, but the Ukrainian soldiers that are still crossing the river, making sure to hold the villages of Krynky and casualty are also pretty swole and big balled as well, as we can see them once again making the crossing in this clip. And there they go. I love to see the different kinds of mags that they got. A lot of plum mags here. We see him throwing up some signs. I love the suppressor, as they would call it, a can, and that sets you back a good amount of coin. Coin. Hey,
man, grab one of those cans. You got enough coin for this, buddy?
I have coin and where will travel. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip in the area, we did get to see that the Ukrainians once again were doing very well for this part of the front line. And when I say quite well, I mean they are obliterating practically every single Russian attack going towards Krynky. It appears that the Russian VDV, the brand new division that was located to this area, is apparently bypassing the defense of Casualty entirely and are finding a lot more emergency in the attack on Krynky. Krynky is apparently a bigger concern to the Russians, probably because it's surrounded by a decent amount of forest that head almost all the way into the Oleshky sands, which could pose a major defensive issue for the Russians, as that dense kind of a forest line that we see near Krynky is a massive advantage to the Ukrainian infantry. And considering that the landing forces of the Ukrainians are entirely infantry based in this area, this is probably why we see that the Russians are continuously trying to stop the Ukrainians from pushing out of the village. So far, I will say that the Russians have succeeded at keeping the Ukrainians in Krynky, but not by a lot, and it appears that it is costing them very dearly, especially out of this brand new VDV division that has been raised. Again today, we saw that the VDV tried to conduct a small probing attack towards Krynky to figure out where a weak spot may be, and they found out that they apparently were not in a weak spot because the entire probing attack was wiped out and didn't even retreat from the field. So I'll be showing y'all this little clip. And here it is. We can see that this was filmed by the Ukrainian Marine Brigade that is currently fighting in the area of Krynky, along with support from Magyar's Birds and several other brigades. And we can see these two Russian MBTs, they appear to be T-72s, moving out onto the paved road. Now, this paved road is giving us a fairly good idea of where they may be. And going off of this, it appears that there is no well-paved road heading into Krynky from the south, meaning that they must be advancing most likely from Korsunka. If we can get some good footage or video here, and let's see what we've got, because we can probably geolocate this one down to a T. Paved road, and there appears to be some kind of an opening here. We cannot tell how long it is at this part of the clip, so we're just going to allow the clip to play a little bit further, and then we're really going to try and get this narrowed down to where it is exactly. You can see them moving down the paved road, apparently looking outwards and right, and it got blown to bits. So, right here we have a dirt road shooting off the paved road. This is a good enough part to geolocate. So going off of that, we are assuming that they're up in this direction. And we are now going to assume that they may be down here. Because I'm looking for a dirt road, and I'm not seeing many of them. Let's see here. That's not a paved road, so maybe they're coming from this direction. Maybe they've found a way to slip in near the Kosachi Lahri area. And I'm actually not seeing that either. This is actually a little bit difficult to try and geolocate because the area is filled with forests, and sadly, so many of the corridors through these forests are well cut out to the point that they kind of start to blend with each other. And it's very hard to find dirt roads as well because there's an excessively high amount of them in this area. And it also appears that a lot of Russian armored activity before the Ukrainian landings created a large amount of dirt paths that still exist and make the geolocation incredibly difficult. The video is located to Krynky, however. We just don't know exactly what part of the village this video is from. But the first T-72B3 went up in a pile of smoke almost immediately after getting towards the village, and then appears to have been detracked, it veered off-road, and slammed into a ditch. Typical Russian drunk driver Tony moment. We can now see another T-72 rolling up with a full load of infantry sitting on the engine bay. We all know where this is going. And we're just waiting for it to run over a mine, and let's see where a mine is. We haven't seen one yet. Disaster is about to strike. It is guaranteed, or money back.
Achtung, the minen!
Achtung, meinen! But, oh my goodness. Well, it appears that the first landing force was met with abysmal failure over there on the upper side of the road. It looks like many of them have decided to clock out. But we see the other
They all got laid.
Hey, everyone, we're gonna get laid! But anyways, we can see the next T-72 driving by. It's actually made it a decent bit further down the road. Oh my lord, whatever just hit it literally hit it right on the back of the engine bay where the next group of infantry were. It appears that this T-72 is now going off-road and is swerving violently. We can see some of the Russians that made it off and are beginning to try and hide on the other side of the berm, as this tank now veers a hard left as well and runs into a ditch. Call the Russians the Ditch Witch because they love the ditch. And we can see the Russians trying to gather up here after their probing attack has practically been caught off guard and by surprise moving down this paved road. Which, to be honest with y'all, I would think they'd have a little bit more intelligence to work out that driving straight down probably the only paved road in the area isn't a smart move, but, you know, they're Russians. We can see all of them running.
You know why the Russians like to get in ditches?
Why?
Because they're what?
We're not
Witches.
going. Oh, okay, that's better.
Man.
Oh, look! It ran over an AP mine. Well, I guess these Russians are lucky that they didn't run over that thing, you know. That would have done a hell of a bit of damage to their foot. But you know what does even more damage? Slaw to my guts. It's a slaw will rupture a spleen. But anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip right there. Absolutely wonderful to see that the Ukrainians were able to stop this probing attack, because due to the complete lack of an ability for this probing attack to gain any information, the Russians are going to be left blind with exactly what they're going up against. Right now, all the Russians know is that that probing attack probably did not report back in, or if any of those guys made it back to Russian lines or a Russian unit, it was probably only a handful of them, maybe 3 or 4, maybe less than that. And they probably told them we were not able to gather any info on the Ukrainian defenders inside of Krynky because our probing attack was wiped out before we even engaged the enemy. And that right there in itself is probably going to make the Russians go even harder on the attacks on Krynky, which will probably lead to higher losses, or they're going to hold back on attacks on Krynky and let the Ukrainians take the initiative and try and advance into pre-prepared Russian defenses. Either way, it is a good thing for the Ukrainians because if the Russians intensify the attacks, the Ukrainians are probably going to be able to wear down the VDV and at least their armored units at a faster rate than they would have before. If the Russians hold back, that means that the Ukrainians can build up all the forces they want inside of Krynky and then advance at their own leisure, meaning that they will be able to hopefully try and get enough intel and recon on the Russian forces and their locations that their attacks will be successful. But we'll just have to give it a couple of days once again to see what happens in Krynky, because the battles down here are actually getting very heated, at least for the size of forces involved. We also see that over here in the town, and I have to check this out, of Korsunka, there is apparently a monastery that was built here in 1784. And it's looking a little old, but that's usually what buildings from 1784 look like.
Look at that guy on that Harley, though. Do you see that?
Man, my man down here, he is riding that hog. You know what I mean? Dude, that thing's probably got like a muffler so loud on it, it's actually shaking the foundations of this monastery. But still really cool to know that there is a monastery here, and hopefully the Ukrainians will be able to recapture this thing, so that way they can once again make sure that the monastery is operational. Pretty neat. But nevertheless, we have to move on from that small rabbit hole. I just saw that and I was like, oh, how neat. It's a monastery. But moving on from that and into our next bit of news, which is in the area, we're now going to be heading down to Oleshky. From what we understand of how the front lines are laid out right now, we know that the Russian forces are mostly surrounding Oleshky, and we're actually going to draw this on the map and try and show like Russian operational areas. It appears that they have a very firm hold on the city of, well, the town more so, of Oleshky, and at least a part of the E97 that's leading up to it. So we're going to put clear Russian control as this marker right here, and we're going to fill that in red. And we'll do that, and we'll give it a little bit of a border thickness. So we'll say that that's a clear area of Russian control. These areas down here near Holopristan and Kardashinka, they appear to be less controlled by the Russians, but still to a larger amount than other areas. So we're going to put this in yellow, because it appears that this is also a very difficult area to attack, considering that it's practically inside of the delta itself. It makes it very hard for the Ukrainians to get in here and try and fight against the Russians. So we're just going to label this whole area in yellow, because that's a pretty mild color, halfway in between red and green. So we're going to put moderate control. We'll put that right there, and let's see here. We'll fill that in with a nice fullness of color. Yellow is actually really bright. And then this area over here in between Kazachilahari and Krynky appears to be something of a mixed bag. It almost appears like the Russians hardly have solid control of the area, and they may even be losing it at the moment, although they have dedicated an entirely new VDV division to the area. So we're going to highlight this area in green. Pretty much the entire highway north of the Oleshky Sands we're going to highlight in green. So this is going to go out all the way to Novi Lahari, and then we're going to bring it back. Man, that's what they say at the club. We're going to bring it back. But anyways, we're going to put that right there, and where we're going to...
They said they're going to break it down, actually.
I don't know what they say, man. I've never been to the club. But anyways, loosely controlled by the Russians here. And we're going to put this in green. This is probably where we're going to see the Ukrainians making the most progress. But going off of this, this is what we're thinking that the front lines are looking like right now, and probably what the Ukrainians care about the most as far as their frontline positions go. The Ukrainians, of course, are trying to make a concerted effort to push out of Kazachilahari and Krynky, but it also appears that the Russians are trying their damnedest. That's the reason why they brought in the new VDV unit, to make sure that they will not be moving any further out of the Dnipro Delta area. If they did, they may start to threaten this clearly controlled area of Oleshky, and the Russians are controlling this for a very important reason. The only crossable or fordable area of the Dnipro River in this entire region is right here at the Antonovsky Bridge. If the Ukrainians tried to cross, this isn't even an OPSEC issue because this is just clear. This is the only place they can. There is packed earth in this area, meaning that if you dropped off an armored vehicle here, it is not going to take a lot of extra effort to just start rolling that thing straight up into Russian lines about 3 miles south of where this marsh begins. Other areas cannot support that. This area here is a railroad bridge. It does not appear to be packed earth and probably would not be able to support the weight of a medium, oh, well, not a medium, but a main battle tank in general. And also the railroad bridge was heavily damaged very early on in the war, sometime around July of 2022, and was never repaired. The area of the dam at Novikakhovka is completely unusable. With the dam being destroyed, there is no way to try and create a fordable area. And on top of that, the Russian defenders in Novikakhovka are probably well entrenched, considering that it's an urbanized area. So going out of all of that, That's why the Russians are probably defending Oleshky and have the highest concentration of forces here than anywhere else. If the Ukrainians did manage to create a river crossing at the Antonovsky Bridge, Oleshky would be the one to take the brunt of pretty much the entire armored and infantry push that the Ukrainians would be bringing into this area. But moving on from that, we did get a clip from inside of Oleshky today showing us that some Russian forces that were garrisoned in Oleshky ended up being a part of an impromptu Ukrainian border guards home makeover. Check it out. We can also hear that the Ukrainian border guards are dropping the trap remix as this drone drops the trap on the Russians and catches them by surprise, with their pants down and also drunk. A fairly Russian combination, if I say so myself. But we can also see the ammo burning up inside the house, and now the house is on fire. A real makeover if I've ever seen one. But sadly, no matter how many makeovers you give to the Russians, it really does live up to the old-fashioned phrase, putting lipstick on a pig. But nevertheless, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news in Oleshky, and all the good news that we've gotten from this area of the Dnipro Delta, and we're now going to be moving on to other news. This is kind of the big news of the night, and I didn't really get a lot of clips, sadly, because I was hearing about it, I was seeing it, and I was looking at it. But I will tell y'all what I heard and saw, and I will just have to say, for one of the few times on this channel, trust me, bro, this is how it happened. Overnight, the Russians launched a massive drone attack on Ukrainian infrastructure. Literally at the exact same time, somewhere about 30 minutes before or after that drone attack from the Russians was launched, the Ukrainians launched one of their own. The Kursk Oblast actually put out an announcement from the governor to take shelter because air raid sirens were sounding and a mass drone attack was flying into Russian territory from Ukraine. At the exact same time, Ukrainian air defense was being activated and getting ready to shoot down all of the incoming drones from the Russians, including this video that we got from Zaporizhia. And last night had to have been one of the toughest nights recently for Ukrainian air defense to work because the visibility conditions were as bad as they possibly could get. It was so foggy and so snowy that when you see this clip, they are hardly seeing anything. They're very lucky to have shot down, I believe it was like almost all of the drones except for one or two of them, but this was what the prevailing weather conditions over most of Ukraine looked like during this drone attack. But anyways, we can see the spotlights moving through the sky. And look at that. That actually looks really cool with it being all foggy out. It almost looks like a giant, laser beam.
It does, blit.
But they're looking out there with them spotlights and their eyes, and it's going to be very hard for them to see any drones at all, unless they're flying almost right over their defense position. Well, you see that they got the Dishka at the ready over there on the back of that technical. And we can see that apparently they've spotted something because the Dishkas are opening up. Man, those Dishkas, they don't call them a Dishka for nothing, man. Those are the machine guns that are known for that sound, you know. But
yeah,
man, they went, hey, yeah. But anyways,
that was a good sound right there, a good sound effect.
Man, but anyways, with that, that's the end of that clip right there. Luckily, the Ukrainians were able to shoot down a majority of the incoming drones. I believe they even shot down several cruise missiles as well, although I don't have an exact number on that, and I don't want to tell y'all one because it may be incorrect. Nevertheless, their air defense was wildly successful given the conditions, and considering that, from what we understand, most of Ukraine's air defenses are not radar guided. Most of them are actually guided by the naked eye, just, you know, machine guns on the back of pickup trucks. It is a miracle that they were able to shoot down a large number of those drones, given the visibility. Moving out of that news, the big news of the drone battle, which I didn't have a lot of clips of, and I have to say I'm so sorry, y'all, because I had about, I think it was literally like an hour and a half to prepare for this stream tonight. Usually have a lot more than that, but I was trying to put everything together as quickly as possible, so I hope that this is still good info and the best I can put it out there with the limited time I had to prepare. But moving on into our location unknowns, we got to hear about some interesting business of the snipers of Ukraine. And you know something, y'all? I like sniping. I don't really do it much, me personally, but I think sniping is pretty neat. I'm more of an iron sights guy myself, so I think the farthest out I really shoot is like 300 yards with iron sights. I've never really shot out farther than that accurately, at least at the moment, but we're going to give it a try later on and find out. But anyways, Ukraine made another video speaking about their amazing snipers. And you know something? Let's check it out. So here's the clip.
Ukraine is the largest in Europe since World War II. However, this modern battlefield differs significantly from all wars before. Even snipers who have always been among the most mythical figures on the battlefield have to adapt.
Now, really quickly, I will have to say this. A little bit of an... well, it's true and somewhat untrue on snipers being like mythical figures. In World War I, snipers were pretty much brand new. Of course, many of y'all know about the sharpshooters of the American Civil War, and also the sharpshooters of many other countries, including, I believe it was the Whitworth rifle used by the British, at least a little bit in the target ranges, but snipership and marksmanship really didn't take off until after World War I, and even during World War I, it was kind of in its very early infancy. The first kinds of snipers that were used in the British Army, they would set up a specific pit in the trench that had a curtain put up in front of it, you know, for the British entering, and an officer would stand there and he'd go, all right, who wants to take some shots at the Germans? And then one guy would go in there and grab the rifle that was in there and he would try and take pot shots at the Germans. That was pretty much the beginning of the sniper for the British military, at least in the modern context. As time went on after World War I, we would start to see real snipers as we would envision them in the modern world around World War II. Still not really what they are today, because the snipers, while largely being detached from some infantry units, mostly still were attached to the infantry. And even during the Cold War, the Soviet Union really didn't have snipers, unlike the United States. The United States actually had snipers that were intent on really doing nothing but sitting around for 2 to 3 days, waiting for one guy who was like a colonel or a general to pop up. They would shoot him dead, and then they would run away. And that's their whole job. That was pretty much the role of a sniper in the Western militaries of the Cold War. The Soviets had a completely different idea. They said, what if we gave a designated marksman to every single guy, well, not every single guy, but every single squad in the Soviet army. And so that's what they did. And they ended up inventing the SVD Dragunov, which we have seen very rarely during this war, oddly enough. But they gave an SVD to pretty much every single squad in the Soviet army, and these guys were trained to shoot out to about 800 yards max. They could reach out to 1,000 if they were really stretching it, but generally 800 yards or so. And that was about the role of the sniper, or what we could call a sniper for the Soviet army during the Cold War. Of course, in the West, snipers are truly mythical. You know, they're magic. They shoot out like 1.5 miles the most of the time. But for the Soviets, they're not that mythical because there's just one in every single squad. There's, I think, 30 of them per battalion, I believe. But anyways, back to the clip.
It's a profession that is romanticized by many but mastered by few. I want to show how sniper duos operate on today's battlefield, and to do so, I've joined the Bravo 2 unit.
It is 5 a.m. and we are heading on a sniper's mission. Yesterday we went on a reconnaissance.
Early dawn is the perfect time to sleep into the battle zone. During this time, both daytime and night vision drones struggle with optics. Our drive is safe, but not so soft.
Wow, these snipers just pull up to the battlefield like that in a car.
Yeah, they literally go, okay, guys, road trip, and they just hop in the Tahoe and go driving off to the front.
It's weird because you expect them to show up in like an APC or a carrier or something, like with the other soldiers, and then they just drive up. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, you know, it'd be like dropped off in a helicopter or something, although that would be, you know, kind of getting rid of the whole stealthiness of it. But still, you're like, huh, they just drop off the snipers just kind of in a car. You know, it's like that's kind of a little bit lower than expectations, but probably something the Russians don't expect, you know, because cars are used heavily on both sides, so most of the time they're just dropping off a couple of infantry here and there. This time they're dropping off a sniper team, so probably unexpected by the Russians.
With the snipers team on a reconnaissance day, so they took us with them to go to the further positions to check if there's a possibility for their work tomorrow.
I'll tell you right away so you can make a decision. The position there was severely damaged by the enemy with FPV drones yesterday. A man was killed there and another one wounded. It's foggy now. We just want to go in and see what's going on there.
Okay. Notice that the unit doesn't have sniper rifles today. If the enemy spots a group with sniping equipment, all available firepower will head our way. For this very reason, the unit avoids working from existing positions and trenches to avoid.
Quick fun fact about that, that's actually something that is historically normal. In World War I, the response, because by the early part of World War I, it was the situation I was talking about where the British would just put a guy in a pit with a rifle and they tell him to take pot shots. By the end of World War I, there were actual snipers, and that's really where modern sniping, or the sniper, comes from, is from World War I, around late 1917 and through 1918. Back in the day, when the sniper started to become a bit of a problem, both sides had this reaction. If they thought a sniper was in an area, they would send off some coordinates to the artillery and they blanket the entire grid, and that's how they would deal with a sniper. It's almost been the same throughout all of history, because snipers are, of course, very good at concealment, really hard to spot, so you really don't know where they specifically are. You can get an idea of where they generally were based off of the gunfire, and then you just call in artillery and you blanket the grid, and hopefully it gets them. But with that,
avoid drawing attention to the infantry.
Those tree lines you see are already enemy controlled. That's why we move slowly. When we move fast, they see us, okay?
The role of snipers has evolved with the arrival of drone warfare. Suicide drones, particularly FPV-1s, are flooding the battlefield. As mentioned before, yesterday a man was killed by an FPV drone in this very trench. But we've come prepared.
This is a secret development of the US. I'm kidding, it's a Ukrainian creation.
I was about to say, not so secret anymore.
It's a trench electronic warfare device that helps jam the FPVs. We hear an FPV drone from about 500 meters away. It has a characteristic sound. It's different from a Mavic. We turn it on, and if we're lucky, the drone falls down.
We must advance to reach an optimal shooting distance. The further we go, the line of trees baldens like an old man's head, exposing us more and more. Luckily, today we're covered in the morning fog. Given these challenges, finding a
wait a minute, hang on, was that a Leopard 2?
That was an old man's head.
That was no old man's head right there. That is either an AMX-10 or a Leopard 2.
morning fog.
That is an AMX-10 right there, because it has the wheel wells for it. But unfortunate, this thing got blasted to shreds.
Given these challenges, finding a proper position for sniping may take days. But today's task was a success.
My man out here with the M16A2, respectable.
We've never been at these positions before. Our main task is to investigate and establish a connection between friendly units, to understand what's going on. Now, in principle, we know where to choose potential positions, where to hide, where to approach.
So today I've learned that sniper's
Isn't that British vehicle?
is not as pretty as
Yeah, the Wolfhound, I think. It looks... The Mastiff, I think this is a Mastiff.
Yeah, I think it's a Mastiff.
It looks like one. It looks like it was knocked out on the front axle and then abandoned, because it doesn't look like it caught on fire and burned. It just looks like it was disabled, and then they just abandoned the armored truck up here on the front. But still,
Jeez.
yeah, that looks like some nasty damage to that front axle, but it looks like the crew compartment survived the hit.
So today I've learned that sniper's work is not as pretty as it seems to be in the movies. It involves lots of preparation, waiting, listening, lots of risk, of course, and kilometers of walking in this crazy mud.
As my best partner says, the feet feed the hunter.
Justin, that guy's in defeat. Now to the workday.
Yesterday we went on reconnaissance. Today it's time for real work.
Same old road, and by now we know the biggest holes and bumps. This time, the loaded Barrett rifles travel with us. A combat medic accompanies us,
Nice pick.
just in case.
You know, with the United 24 around, this has really got to burden this sniper team here, because usually sniper teams only consist of about a spotter and an actual sniper. But with the crew here, I bet you this is almost the size of a full squad. Instead of just a sniper team, you know, it's a
We'll prepare our position and then come back to wait for the right time. And then we'll work.
While we wait for the morning fog to clear, we have some time to kill. I ask the guys how they stay motivated after over 20 months of fighting.
That guy's from Estonia.
I realize that this is going to be a long war. I have decided that I will be here till the very end, until we win or lose. There's psychological stress, but I gave my word. I believe that I have the moral strength, spirit, and determination to devote myself and defend Ukraine.
I have to say this really quickly. I love to see that this man is so dedicated to the cause. And also his words are incredibly inspiring. And in fact, he's taken it to such a level that he even has a little patch on his uniform that says, "Be positive." And I'm so glad to see that the man is into being positive like we are.
No matter what it takes.
Someone's about to lose their mind at that joke. They're gonna like have stroke.
As anticipated, the shooting part is swift. Visual contact confirmed, 2 shots and we're out. If these days have shown us one thing, it is that sniping is an art form, and to do it right, it takes what few have. A combination of strength, will, and most importantly, patience.
Crispy.
Man, they hitting us with a base. That's concerning me because I don't know if they have a license for this, but you see them moving on now. I'm praying they got a license for this. If not, YouTube is about to snipe us like they sniped the Russians. And with that, that's the end of that clip right there. By the way, I've been watching Guga Foods, if that's how it's called. They have some really good, like, food recipe things, like, I'm telling you. But anyways, with that, very interesting to see the snipers of Ukraine, and wonderful to know that there are such inspiring folks out there like them, and also to see a little bit of how they actually work their job in the field. I see a lot of people, Matthew, completely did not like that joke. I was like, I saw it coming because it was a B positive blood type patch, so that way people know what blood type you have. And so when I saw it, I was like, oh look, B positive, and then everyone was like,
oh, that's what you meant?
Yeah, that's what I meant. You know, like it's B positive blood type.
I was sitting there the whole time. I was desperately trying to figure out, like, where do you see B positive on their vest? I didn't see that, and I didn't know you were talking about the blood type the whole time.
Yeah, and so someone said, not funny, and it, like, I don't know, man. Like, if it's not funny to you, it was funny to me, and I bet you they would get a laugh out of it too. I mean, honestly, my blood type, I think, is literally B negative. So, but we always try and remain positive, although my literal blood is negative. But anyways, with that, we're moving on out of that and watching the Ukrainians drain the water out of their SPG after it had been sitting in a flooded out dugout for a little bit. And when you see that you put a little Santa face on him because he's about to open up the floodgates, it's Christmas, baby. Oh! Oh, the ammo, it's ruined.
That doo-doo water.
Look, it's the, let's see, it's the Ohio River.
Down in Ohio, I'm in Ohio.
I got you yachts in Ohio. Oh, that's gonna be so dirty. All the dirt and everything. That laugh! Oh my God! That laugh blew out the lung.
That laugh was crazy. Let's hear it one more time. That's the craziest laugh I've ever heard.
I love it. I love it. That was a great laugh. Oh my lord. Well, at least he got a swimming pool. And it's still going. 55 seconds later, it's still pouring out water. But nevertheless, wonderful to see. Good to see that they're all getting a little bit of a kick out of it. But I bet you cleaning that SPG is going to be very rough. All the dirt inside of that thing, very, very dirty. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to hear from the British Ministry of Defense. Well, lo and behold, the phone services were down. I'm not even going to cover this much because we actually covered this a few days ago. I just wanted y'all to just wanted to show y'all, and of course have some corroboration to the news that we put out, because usually we're several days ahead of even the British Ministry of, the Ministry of Defense or the Ministry of Intelligence, either way you want to look at it. Nevertheless, just had to point that out, just to show y'all. And if y'all want to read a little bit more, the link is in the description below. Moving on from that, and into our next little bit of news, we also got to see a Ukrainian T-64BV driving past some Ukrainian soldiers on a country road with the same song playing that's been playing for 2 years. Just that one that goes... But anyways, here's a clip. When you see the T-64BV driving on by, people posing for the camera.
Can you do the song, like, since we can't play the real thing, you can do your own rendition of it while the video is playing?
You know what? Let's do it. Let me rewind it. But anyways, I can't do that anymore.
I love it. I love it.
No, I don't know what it is, man, but that song always reminds me of, like, the Arab Bazaar music that would always play whenever anyone in a movie went to an Arabian market. It was always that same little, like, reed instrument noise that was playing in the background. You know, you know what, y'all? If I could get my practice chanter back, which I'll have to, like, get one for the bagpipes, I could actually probably play that song on the bagpipe chanter instead. But anyways, moving on from that, which is great to see the T-64BV driving by some friendly troops. We're now going to be moving on into our next clip, which is the Russian casualty report, and y'all are going to love to see it. Ooh!
Oh my gosh!
Oh my lord! 930 Russian soldiers taken out over 24 hours. A very good number, and once again indicating to us that the Russians are just not doing well, and they are coping and seething, and most importantly, they're molding. But not only that, 930 of them are not doing that any longer, and 930 of them will not be around to see the end of this war when they lose. But moving on from that little abysmal casualty report, at least for the Russians, we're now moving on to the armored personnel carriers, where we got to see that they lost 13 of them. One for the original 13 colonies. The first fold. But I'm just kidding. Moving on from that into the next one, we also got to see that 11 supply trucks were destroyed. We don't know which ones were fuel trucks. We don't know which ones were supply trucks, but nevertheless, a pretty decent number, and of course, wonderful to see. 14 main battle tanks were also knocked out as well. Around a battalion tactical group and a half's worth of tanks. A pretty decent amount. If we were to put these in a field, you would be able to divide these by a number of 7 and have, the number 7 and have 2 groups of 7. A pretty impressive number to think about. We also saw that only 1 artillery piece was lost today. The Ukrainian counter battery was out on lunch. However, 12 drones were shot down, 1 cruise missile was destroyed, and they were able to get the celebratory 1 Bobcat skid steer just to top out the day. And of course, these numbers are all great to see, and once again, backing up the idea that the Russians are really not having a fun time in this war anymore, if they ever were in the first place. But nevertheless, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news in our casualty report, and on out of the casualty report, and on into that northeastern area, because we have a lot of frontline news from outside of the Kherson or Dnipro River area, the location unknowns from inside of Russia. There is a lot from north to south along the entirety of this front line today, and I want to make sure that we get to tell y'all every little bit about it. And y'all know something a little bit crazy? I'm going to tell y'all something a little bit crazy. Some of y'all may notice that tonight we've gotten back a lot of viewers. Last night we were at a peak of around 3,800 live viewers. Tonight I did something because we didn't have anything to cover on it. I did not put a link to the Middle East war map in the description. There was no mention of the Middle East anywhere on this title or description to the stream. And you know what's wild? I did that tonight not to test with anything. We just didn't have any news to cover, and we haven't had any really for the past 3 days from the Middle East. and I removed it, and lo and behold, apparently YouTube starts promoting the stream again, and now we have around 4.5 thousand live viewers. Coincidence? I don't know. I'm kind of on the side of probably not, but don't you find that a little bit weird? Because I'm finding it a little bit weird, me personally, but nevertheless, and also I thank you, Blue Plan, for that yellow hand that's putting up a very interesting hand sign. It looks like the sign for the Lee Spring Army. But nevertheless, we're now going to be moving on into this northeastern area. But before we do, I want to talk to all of y'all about what we just noticed, and not only that, everything else about the war that we've been bringing up. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, let's get to talking and go over the first poll that we have for the night. And the question says, a U.S. warship shot down 14 attack drones near the coast of Yemen, and what are your thoughts? 58% said that's practically an act of war. 29% said, it's really just an escalation. 9% said unsure, and 4% said the U.S. should not be near Yemen. And on this one, I gotta say that I'm not very clear if the drones were shot at the warship or simply near the warship. That is a very big distinction to know, and right now I'm not very clear about that. I have seen some posts saying that, actually on Twitter, saying that it was shot at the warship, and if that is the case, then in my opinion, that would practically be an act of war. But if it was simply around the warship, well, then the U.S. really took the option to shoot them down, and they didn't really have to. So on this one, I'm a little bit unsure, but leaning toward the act of war side of things. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that that is certainly a provocative act by the Houthis. For 14 drones to have been near a U.S. destroyer, most likely be dipped. I knew the name and then I forgot it as soon as I was about to say it. But for 14 drones to be in the airspace where the Arleigh Burke class destroyer we have there had to shoot them down, that is a provocative act in its own right. We also heard that another merchant ship was hit today in the area, but considering the lack of inactivity, or largely the presence of inactivity on the part of the U.S. government, it wasn't even really worth covering, because what do I do? Really just get y'all outraged day after day that the U.S. is doing nothing? I mean, we could do that, but at the same time, it just seems like nobody is really caring, at least in any position of power in the U.S. government. I would say that if I was the president of the United States, I would consider that to be such a severe act for a drone to have to shoot down 14, well, for a destroyer to have to shoot down 14 entire drones. I would consider that to be a act of war, considering the sheer volume of drones they used that we had to shoot down. That's what I would consider it. Some people don't like that, though. Some people say that that's warmongering. I would say it's kind of warmongering to send 14 drones towards a U.S. destroyer. That seems like warmongering to me on the part of the Houthis, but what do I know, y'all? What do I know? I'm only here just covering the news. I'm just the newsman. But with that, I hope that does address that little tidbit of news fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our only poll to address for now. So with that, we are moving on to our super chat questions. And up first, guess what? We have one from Kiwi Girl 1111. He throws in a $90 donation, and a huge shout out to Kiwi Girl for that support. And she says, hoping you're both getting some well-deserved sleep-ins during your holiday break. And
and thank you so much, Kiwi Girl 1111, and thank you so much for helping this channel to keep rolling. We have been getting a little bit of sleep. Sometimes we're getting no sleep, but most of the time during this holiday break, we're getting some really good sleep. Hopefully, we will be able to put out the gun review video soon. We have them in the works right now. They should be getting filmed, and we should have the first one out, hopefully, here soon. I'm expecting within like the next week, hopefully, at least for our very first video, but there will be many more to come, at least all that we can fit in during this holiday break. We are also going to try, if we can, to produce some. It's probably going to be a much slower production schedule during law school, though, but maybe like 1 or 2 every month. Is what I'm kind of hoping for during law school. But of course, we'll have to get back around to that. We'll also have to get our final grades and find out what we made as our grades in this last semester of law school to then figure out how we're going to be doing that going forward. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much for hoping that we get some well-deserved breaks during this holiday season, get a little bit of sleep, and not only that, wishing us well, and also supporting this channel to help it to keep rolling. That's also a big thing that takes a lot of stress off of our shoulders and lets us know that we can continue to do this as a job and cover the news for all of y'all. It's the best job I've ever had, and I gotta thank y'all so much for helping it to be possible. And I know it's also the best job Matthew's ever had. I know it is.
Indeed, I gotta tell you, the best, Jerry, the best.
Because we went from cleaning bathrooms well, at least
Well,
I
not
did.
me. I didn't clean no bathroom.
Man, I was checking out folks at the the cash register at Publix, and then they told me to start cleaning bathrooms, and then that's when I was like, man, this sucks. But still, thank you so much once again, Kiwi Girl 111, 1111 for the support, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running, and also being one of our Kiwi viewers from New Zealand. Really cool. And with that, thank you so much once again, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $50 donation from Ari Sawini, a longtime channel legend as well, and thank you, Ari, for that support. And they said, great channel, and thank you, Matt and Andrew, and here's a bit of support, and hope you keep it up, from Kiwi Wife and Finn.
Hey, and huge shout out to the Kiwi Wife and the Kiwi Finn, and I gotta thank you so much, Ari Sweeney, for saying it's a great channel, and I gotta thank you for being here all the time and enjoying it. It is folks like you who helped to make this thing possible, and I thank you so much for being a part of this thing and helping us to keep this thing running. We are going to keep it up. I'm telling y'all what, we are going to keep this thing up until the war ends, or until we're banned, one or the other. It does appear that YouTube is starting to come down on war reporters in general, even if they are pro-Ukrainian, and are possibly starting to ban them and get rid of them just for reasons. But we are going to keep this thing running as long as we are on air. As long as this channel exists and y'all can click on it, we will continue to cover this news. That is a big thing to me. I've been doing this for 661 days. At this point, I've been doing this so long, I don't know anything else but doing this. And I thank you so much, Ari Sweeney, for the support and helping us to keep this thing rolling, because you are one of the people who have helped to make it possible for me to focus entirely on this channel thanks to your support. If y'all like the idea of the Least Spring Army lasting until the final day of the war, throw in an LSA in the live chat. I want to see it blow up. You know what? As a matter of fact, blow up the live chat all night long. Not with LSAs, anything you want. Throw in an LSA, throw in a question, throw in a comment, throw in a Slava Ukraini, throw in anything you want. Just throw it in and keep it running all night long. I want to see some action down there. I want to see it. And so with that, while we wait for the live chat to literally go nuclear, I got to thank you once again, Ari Sweeney, for the support and helping this thing to keep running. And thank you for being the Kiwi Wife and the Finn. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're moving back into the news.
All right, and the last one of the segment goes to Steve Watkins at work. He is still at work. He's not at home yet. But Steve, thank you very much for that $50 donation. And he says, take a live chat question, please. And we shall. And thank you very much, Steve, for that support. And before we grab one, Enforcer, what say you?
I say me. And thank you for the support, Steve Watkins, and helping this channel to keep rolling. And we will make sure to grab a live chat. Thank you for always being at work. Although Steve Watkins can be like, I'm not at work. But I'm just kidding with you, Steve Watkins. We respect you greatly. And thank you once again for always being here with us and helping this channel to keep rolling. And what's the live chat, Matthew?
And the live chat question is going to go to Julian Britt, who says, I'm just curious, but are some Ukrainian snipers using the Barrett 50 cal?
From what we know, some are. Although they appear to really like the Snipe X Alligator a lot more. And I'll show y'all the Snipe X Alligator. This thing is a sniper, but kind of not. I would say it's more so the classification of an anti-material rifle, considering its caliber. The 50 caliber, the 50 BMG, it's usually considered an anti-material rifle. These things, I would say, are certainly an anti-material rifle because their caliber is, in fact, larger than 12.7 millimeter. This is like 14.5 millimeter or something similar. It's huge. And also, this is a Ukrainian soldier holding two Snipe X Alligators, so you can kind of get an idea of their scale. These things are huge. They may as well be
Dang, those suppressors are massive, too.
Man, you got to have a big suppressor for these things, man. I mean, like, you know, it's got a lot of kick. And look at the shells, man.
That's basically like an artillery shell.
Pretty much. I mean, it may as well be an armored personnel carrier's main gun. In fact, I think it is. Like, I think 14.5 millimeter is the main caliber of a BRDM-2, which is a light scout car from the Soviet Union. But these things are just huge. And it appears that they like these a little bit more, probably because they're indigenously designed and there's probably a large amount of ammunition available for them. But we have heard of some Barrett M82A1s being used by the Ukrainians. And also, the more modern version, which I think is the I can't think of the name, the designation of it, but there's a newer and greater version of the M82A1. I just can't think of its name. But with that, thank you so much once again for asking a great question. And also, Steve Watkins, for you supporting this channel and sponsoring that live chat, because it is folks like you who have made this channel so possible for so long. And we have to always thank y'all greatly, because y'all are what have been keeping us alive. It's never about the viewership. It's never about how much support we are able to get out of this thing. It is just about us being able to keep this thing rolling. And y'all's support has made it possible for us to keep this thing going, to make sure that we're able to cover the news, and we are greatly appreciative to all of y'all for that. We're also greatly appreciative that y'all have helped the channel and the Lee Spring Army together claim the title of raising over $1.3 million in support of Ukraine through our fundraisers. Everything about that is absolutely incredible. And I always have to make a mention about that, even though we're on Super Chats and it's not a fundraiser night, because a lot of y'all who Super Chat, like you, Steve Watkins at work, y'all are the ones who also help those fundraisers to unbelievably go past goals that other people would never expect to see when fundraising for Ukraine. It is truly unbelievable what y'all been able to do, and I got to thank every single one of y'all, not only for making this channel possible, but also making the fundraisers possible and everything else. Y'all make this channel worthwhile to run, and we're always honored and always grateful to have every single one of y'all here. And with that, we're now going to be moving on out of this question segment and on into the northeastern front lines near Tavozhanka, where we got to see that the Russians were getting hit pretty hard by the 14th Brigade. It appears that an entire Russian squad is on the move, no spacing whatsoever. They moved past a large amount of destroyed Russian vehicles into a tree line where the Ukrainians already had it dialed in, and now the Ukrainians are slamming them. And look at that. They got.
Do you remember that prank channel that used to go eat a donut or something and they'd yell "Slamming" like on the side of the street?
Dude, I was actually
that's like what they're saying right now.
Man, that really is almost like what they're saying right now. They're almost saying slamming. But anyways, moving on from that towards Vilshana, we got to see the Ukrainians whipped out a Wappa. This thing is a KS-19 100 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. And let me pull this thing up for y'all so y'all can get a picture of it outside of it being on the back of this truck. These things are Wappas. 100 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. Probably one of the biggest anti-aircraft guns ever used, at least from what I can think of at the moment. These things are just unbelievably large. May as well be an anti-tank gun. We can also see one mounted right here in 2017 on what appears to be the hull of a Shilka. Pretty freaking bizarre. It just looks wild. And the Ukrainians put one of these on the back of a KAMAZ, apparently, or a Tatra, one or the other. Started blasting Russians. Oh yeah! Have you ever wanted to watch the Russians get absolutely obliterated by an anti-aircraft gun? Well, watch and learn as the Ukrainians start blasting them with this giant-ass piece of artillery. Look at it go. Wow, that's got a lot of recoil. About as much recoil I had when I saw Chris's mom. But nevertheless, they're now packing it up and getting ready to scoot on out of there. But with that, that's the end of the clip right there. Absolutely beautiful to see the kind of firepower the Ukrainians are bringing against the Russians in the area, and absolutely great to know that the front lines have not moved an inch in the northeastern area. Moving on from that and further down the front lines and into the area of Kuzymivka, we got to see a Russian armored personnel carrier get hit pretty thoroughly near the area of Kuzymivka. Here we can see the wilds of the northern Ukrainian steppe as a Russian APC slowly wanders its way across the fields looking for an area to burrow. But unfortunately, it has been spotted by one of the APC's worst parasites, the drone. The drone strikes at the APC, absolutely decimating it and its young carried on the back of the APC. It appears to have smacked one quite violently and taken it out, a delicious meal for the Ukrainian drone operator. Moving on from that little bit of news and on to our next bit near the area of Svatove, we also get to see that apparently a BMP ran over an anti-tank mine. The little BMP scurries across the fields looking for a place to hide after an unsuccessful attack upon the Ukrainians. It quickly searches for an area in the tree lines where it may find refuge, but unfortunately, it is about to fall into a nasty surprise. The TM-62 anti-tank mine.
Ай, красота, блядь. Ты что, ебать?
I crush a tally indeed, and beautiful to see that if
The other guy said, shh, you're in the library. And the guy got super loud when he was talking.
That's it, dude. He said, shh, I'm watching the movie. And the other guy went, ah, sucker. Everybody else like, dang, bro. But they got another BMP, and I love to see it. Y'all know we love to see it. But moving on from that little bit of news near the area of Swatove, I'm moving down towards Krymena. We also got to see some Ukrainian forces on the move near the area of Dubrova. The caption calls it a hunting party, but I have a feeling they're not hunting deer. Hi-ho, hi-ho, it's off to work we go. Hi-ho, burn orcs. But anyways, we see them continuing on the move. And there's also a mismatch of AKs and M4s in this group. I wonder what the ammunition requirements for this unit looks like and what kind of logistical complications are involved with having different kinds of service rifles in the same squad. Nevertheless, we wish them the best of luck, even in the cold and snowy winter conditions that they find in the Krymena forest right now. Moving on from that and into our next bit of news near Avdiivka, or as it's called, Avdiivka, it appears in Ukrainian, we can see that a Russian armored personnel carrier was hit. We can see that the Ukrainians have set up the close wires quite well in front of this drone, getting it ready for that final killing lunge. Here it comes, right down on top of the APC. It appears to be a BMP-2. And it appears that the driver apparently was told there was a drone coming down right on top of him because he takes a hard right. Well, actually, a hard left. Call this driver Karl Marx because he's turning this thing left. And we can see Russian rolling around on top of the turret. And the drone missed, but now that the BMP has come to a complete stop, they're going to ram the thing. Oh my, dude, look at the driver. He's like, I have failed at my job and my day is ruined. But anyways, look, it zoomed in on him. He's like, oh, bleh. And the drone hit anyways, right under the turret, right near the engine bay, taking that APC out, and maybe the crew with it. But moving on from that little clip in the northern area of Bakhmut, it's time for us to quickly look at deep state, because the state is deep, and the deep is state. But what in the world do we have in the area around Bakhmut? Alright, so let's take a look at the last 24 hours, and the front line has been clarified. Very good information to know. And what kind of clarifications do we have? It appears that the Russians have not been able to clarify anything, much like their commanders back at Rostov-on-Don. It appears that they have not been able to move forward a single inch. But that hasn't stopped the Ukrainians from absolutely stugnaing a Russian tank, and making sure that the Russians remember that the Stugna is in fact a force to be reckoned with. We can even see that this one has the Arabic interface for the export variant of the Stugna. Here's the clip. Alright, beyond the trap remix, which makes me feel like it's the early 2010s again, we can see the Stugna slamming right into the Russian MBT at the very beginning of the clip, making sure that the Russians' ears are ringing. Not only are their ears ringing, but also the alarm bells are ringing, because now they know they are a target for the Ukrainian Stugna. That little BMP, BMD, correction, is dust. And of course, we all know we love to see it slow, or as it says, war, in inverse. Moving on from that and into our next little clip near Bakhmut, we also got to see a little bit further down a cool picture of some Ukrainian soldiers near the front lines in Bakhmut. Take a look at these guys. This guy here looks like he's warming something up on top of a Bunsen Boina. It also looks like he's on the planet of Hoth in Star Wars. I gotta say, love the uniform. And also, we can see in this next picture, all of them wearing winter camouflage, looking like them beautiful Dalmatians that we all know the camouflage looks like at this point, and also just posing for the picture. Great to see these soldiers, of course, taking a little bit of moment to document their time on the front lines, and really nice to see that they appear to be in fairly good spirits. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we saw that a Russian soldier must be in great spirits, because that's about all he has left after a drone ended up hitting him near the front lines. This was filmed by the 3rd Brigade, also formerly known as the Azov. But here goes the Russian. I have to run because I have legs. And we can see, oh, wait a minute, what kind of rifle does he have? Maybe an AK, but there's like... Yeah, yes, past tense. That's a good point. But, Bliet, let me run. Bliet. I cannot shoot that thing in time. Oh, my lord, Bliet. And it got him.
Jeez, man, that thing came in like a little ant, and he was like just standing there, like didn't even bother to run off.
Dude, the drone operator literally said, "Stick him," and that drone, yeah, that would charging right at him. That thing had that dog in him, but I can tell you this: that Russian got no dog in him. But with that, we're now moving on from that clip. Very nice to see that they were able to take care of some Russians in that area, and it's time for us to move on from Bakhmut and a little bit further down. Let's see, and also Incognito, if I can speak English, asked a question. He said, will the Enforcer start a new channel to review the guns? No, we're going to be doing it on this channel. Pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. But moving on from that and into our next clip near Avdiivka, we got to see some Ukrainian snipers at work in this area on the view of a phone.
Uh-oh.
Stand by. Hold up, everyone. Oh, they're just being a little... Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. This one's zoomed in a pretty good bit. Okay, well, I could show you all the way up to about 1:30. So let me go back. Because you see, I wasn't able to see this clip before the stream because there's so little time. Usually I get to see a little bit of them and vet them. But this one shows a Russian losing his cool, you know, blowing off some steam, blowing off the top, you know, maybe losing his head. But I cannot show you all past 1:30, but I can show you all everything leading up to it. Here we can see them looking at their camera on their phone at the Russians in the distance. We can see a Russian right out there. He's just chilling, and now he's not.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear.
This is the Extreme Tourism Company, it says.
Man, what's that? That is some kind of tourism right there. Ooh, goodness.
Surely that doesn't mean, like, you know, people come to Ukraine or something like that and they, like, go on a hunting trip, if you know what I mean.
Well, you know, we know there are some people out there who would love to take a chance to look macho and do something like this, but, you know, there are people out there like that. I wouldn't doubt it. And they threw up the card at the end for sure. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, they've got a T.me page.
You know, let's see here. Oh, we're going to have to take a break from this one. I didn't catch that earlier, but nevertheless, it looks like he took a dive, but he did not get back up. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that little clip. Nevertheless, if y'all want to see the rest of it, y'all know where to go. We're going to be moving on down to Pervo for a moment, though, because we did get to see another Swedish Archer SPG in the area. And pretty interesting to see that they once again have these SPGs just rolling around and doing their thing. Beautiful to see, wonderful to know, and also, what kind of an off-brand comment was that? How weird and how
wild,
racist.
too.
Yeah, just racist. But anyways, moving on from that, very interesting to see the little Archer in action. I say little, this thing's actually huge. But great to Sweden, and a huge shout out to them for just being a supporter of Ukraine, even when they're not in NATO yet, technically. I think they're still working on the ascension process, but still wonderful to see that they did end up supporting Ukraine, and a lot of their equipment has ended up making it towards the battlefield. Over the past 24 hours, we have seen that in the Avdiivka area, there have been practically no advances whatsoever. It appears that the Ukrainians are once again keeping a very firm hold on the Avdiivka coke plant and also other areas around the city, ensuring that the Russians are not making any ground, but also inflicting the highest casualties possible for any attempt to take more ground. We also saw that the Ukrainians were able to hit a fairly significant sized oil depot once again in the city of Donetsk, as it appears that the Ukrainians are making a concerted effort on knocking out Russian oil reserves that are near the front lines. I wonder when that oil burns, does it smell like car gas in the morning?
Probably.
Do I bet you with how black that smoke is, though, that crap just smells like chemicals. You know, it probably just smells horrendous, but maybe it does smell like car gas. I'd be interested to know. Nevertheless, though, we can guarantee that the Russian forces in Avdiivka might be getting a little dry for oil, might be getting a little thirsty. But moving on from that and into the area of Marinka, we also got to see that the 80th Air Assault Brigade was using their L-119s provided by the British against the Russians.
Тим не менше, увага. Зараз будемо працювати, товариство. Всі в броніків в касках.
Отак ти сидиш в бліндажі, потім аеророзвідка знаходить цілі, і ви хутенько йдете
You're
по
sat
ним
in the dugout,
відпрацьовувати.
then you find air recon finds a target, and you go to wait.
Давай.
And so I guess they're punching in with the artillery
Зараз
piece.
буде постріл.
Now will be a shot of 105 millimeters at the enemy infantry. Boom.
Гармата
The
легка
gun is light.
саме
It's meant to
для
assist infantry during
передових
assaults and
дій, для
raids.
наступальних дій це гармата, яка має допомагати штурмовикам.
Do you not care about earphones? I've got these. What the hell is that? I couldn't even tell what that was. It's like I got these, pulls out a literal like cotton ball off of like of a cotton plant. It's like, what is that? Must be some banger plane. Nah, but sometimes yeah.
105-го він
Dude, he's sitting there and he's listening to that. He's just there. He's like, sometimes yeah, other times no. Sometimes, man, the song that's playing in his headphone is that. And then other times it's Frank Sinatra. He's like, classic.
He probably thought that he meant how often do they shoot the gun. He said sometimes yes.
Він поправиш мене, якщо я не правий.
The thing about 105 is that smaller than, say, a D30.
Але він дуже
But its
адекватно
shrapnel spread is actually more effective.
Тобто він більш щільніше
Covers a bigger area with shrapnel.
Бо типа радянська двіжуха така.
The Soviet spread, such as on the F1 grenade, depends on luck. And, you know, in kind of a morbid way, we could actually see that very luckily Soviet grenades are not that effective compared to Western grenades. For example, the Trans-Carpathian bombing that we just saw the other day from that, let's see, servant of the people party member at that town hall meeting, or more so the Carpathian meeting, where he threw threw two F1 grenades into the building, held one, and somehow no one ended up dying from them, which was very lucky on everyone's end inside the building. Probably not so lucky for the guy who threw them in and was holding one, because apparently, from what I've heard, they've possibly been able to resuscitate the guy, and he's going to be put on trial for pretty much the attempted murder of everyone in the room. But anyways, good to know that the grenades are not that effective. It can open in two halves, and that's it. Same with the D30.
Так само і Д-30. Там, звісно, більше.
But this one is very effective, right?
Правильно?
Oh, yeah. My knowledge of the L119 ends at Wikipedia. Yes! Yes! All you snobs out there can kiss it. They're using Wikipedia, and if they can use it, I can use it. Like, if this guy is literally putting his life on the line and using Wikipedia as his info, then we can use it. You know what? That's the best qualification I've seen yet. So to everybody out there who actually got to read a book, kiss it. It's
Вікіпедії. Але є дуже, до речі, цікавий факт, що її бабуся, Л-118, попередня версія, в Единбурзькому замку є традиція кожен день о першій годині.
There's a tradition in Edinburgh Castle where every day, except holidays, the gun fires at 1 o'clock. It only makes noise, but this gun's grandmother is a symbol for the British.
Символом для британців кожен день о першій годині традиційно, історично вона робить.
Every day, historically, it fires a shot, since 2001. Before, it was a different gun. Feel the vibe of British traditions here in the mud, in the East. Man, my man here is getting philosophical. He's like, feel the history of Britain course through your veins as we fire this beautiful piece. He's not looking at it as a utilitarian thing. He's looking at it almost like an art form. He's like, what a piece. How nice. It's British. Dude, this guy...
Meanwhile, the gunner is eyeballing these other two guys right sitting there at the gun. Look at that look on his face.
Yeah, he's like, can you stop and just tell me where to shoot? Is it hard to service? We only sort is cleaning and adding oil. Complicated repairs are done in the repairs company. This is a prepared shell for a 105mm L119 gun. Here you can choose between two modes, right? Shrapnel and high explosive. Welcome to the tactical tactics section. We'll be picking boots for combat. What brand do you recommend? Dude, this guy is me on God, dude. He's literally sitting there. He's like, look at the history of this gun. Rabbit hole on the history of the gun. Now he's like, let's do another rabbit hole. What's your favorite brand of boot? And it starts asking people about their boots. I wish I could meet this guy right here, because this guy seems very similar. I would vibe with this guy really well. I've got 600 Krivna boots, and they're superb. When we arrived to Germany for training, we asked what to do if the gun makes 200 shots per day. The American says, pour water on it. I was like, okay. Then he came and said, he may be wrong. It depends on the number of shots. Also, by the way, Matthew, you know, his plate carrier kind of looks a little small.
It does look a little small,
That-
like kind of like the one you've got in there.
Yeah, that damn 10 by 12 plate that's literally the size of a piece of copy paper. I think that thing is too small for really anyone, but apparently it fits someone out there because they make it in that size, but it looks small on him too.
І він потім підходить і через півгодини каже: "Ні, ну ми просто скільки не стріляли, ми не знаємо, можливо, якусь фігню сказали."
See him bringing in the shell. I gotta say, y'all know that these little L119s aren't as impressive as an M777, but I love these little smaller artillery pieces here because they're so mobile, so easy to move with just a 5-man crew or less. I mean, they're just amazing little artillery pieces, and the British did a great job with these things. This is how they work. Hide in a secure hideout. Watch live stream. Hey! Oh, he's really us! He's really us! He's watching a live stream! And if there's a target, in less than a minute, guys are in helmets reloading and firing. Due to Russian counter battery fire, you need to hide after firing. Safety is very important.
You know he's watching the Enforcer live stream. You know he's got to be.
Dude, he's got the same layout, man. He sits there, he's like, look at the artillery piece. You know, the British actually had some really cool artillery pieces. And then he goes in a rabbit hole about British artillery, and then he's like, oh, moving on from that, let's get back to the piece real quick. Let's talk about boots. Who likes boots? What kind of boots are you wearing? To enable work, then it needs to be excited, which is a separate quest. We're stuck. Mr. Miron is trying to do something about it.
Mr. Miron ain't gonna have any luck with that.
they pan to the worst attempt at getting out the mud. And they're like, anyways, high probability that someone in a comfortable vehicle will pull us out. But it's a static target in the middle of the field. Army rule, metal attracts metal. This was ours. Don't worry, Yaroslav. This is our artillery working not far from here. And it is well disguised, as it has no obvious visual indicators. Yeah, he ain't getting that.
Nah, he's stuck.
Oh, here comes the Humvee.
Oh
my lord.
This dude's going ham.
Dude, that guy was literally driving that Humvee at the beginning of the clip like people drove like Willys Jeeps in World War II. Look at this. I mean, oh my gosh. Dude's practically
There's no strategy
sailing.
to that. He's just flooring it.
Oh, he's waving too. Look, he even took the time to wave to the cameraman. He's like, oh, hello. Oh,
No.
now the Humvee's stuck. This is for us. We're jumping in and going. But that's the end of the clip. Huge shout out to Army TV. But that's the little channel that put this out. Amazing stuff. They're from the Ukrainian Army. They put out stuff from the front lines. Really cool to see the L119s in operation. And we really got to see a lot of the soul and character of the Ukrainians that man these artillery units, like those guys, and how personable and funny they can be, and also how relatable they can be. Because I bet all of y'all know a person who goes nerd mode on things like boots and the history of artillery. I bet you all know someone like that. But moving on from that and into our next clip near Avdiivka, we also got to see a picture of a crab in action. And this thing had the biggest cope cage I've ever seen. It literally surrounded the entire turret, and there was also a cope cage surrounding its dugout as well. We've never seen one that well protected before. Really interesting to see, and also hopefully landing some pretty accurate shots. But really, it's just a picture, not much more to add to it. And we're now going to be moving on into our next little bit of news near Avdiivka, where we got to see a Russian tank hit by the 103rd Brigade. Oh yeah. But
That's a sick beat. I play some more.
Dude, that's the kind of beat that you make when you get kicked out of the bar and you're in the back alley near the trash cans. You go boom, ding, boom. That's it. But anyways, I wouldn't know anything about that because I don't drink. Anyways, we can see the FPV drone flying in. And look at it go. Look at it go. Tanks on the roll. Tanks on the move. Tanks in the ditch. Tanks on the street. The drones coming in, hot and heavy. Oh my goodness, it's going right for the engine bay. Right for the gunner, who pops back. Oh my lord, it's nuclear. Call this tank Oppenheimer because it just blew up. Absolutely amazing. And I've seen some clips of Oppenheimer on YouTube, and I gotta be honest with y'all, Oppenheimer's a little sniveling baby and needs to grow up. But nevertheless, beautiful to see an explosion. And also, by the way, all jokes aside, Cillian Murphy did do pretty good in that role. But that's the end of that clip, and great to see that they were able to get a Russian tank in such an impressive fashion. Moving on from that into the area of Robotny, we actually have a significantly long clip from here today because the Russians did attempt a counterattack from Novoprokopivka to try and push the Ukrainians out of the currently somewhat held Surovikin line in this area and back towards Robotny. It failed, but we did get to see a lot of the battle and what led to the Russian failure in the field. This was filmed by none other than the 65th Mechanized. Here we can see the Russians epically advancing across the field. Like, it's some advert music, but what we really are seeing here is some Russian squads that have dismounted from their BMPs, attacking in broad daylight, suicidal, with practically no cover. This is already a mission from hell. And they're also advancing through the middle of the wide open field. Once again, on another not good sign. Another one. DJ Khaled! They the worst. We the best. DJ Khaled. So, y'all, I'll have to share with y'all something really interesting about Russian doctrines. This kind of stuff here is a last-ditch, desperate attack. This also breaks all norms that have been known since 2014. The Ukrainians used to do things like this in 2014 when the Ukrainian army was made up entirely of conscripts and was poorly trained with some very incompetent commanders in charge of the army. This is what they did during the beginning of the Donbass conflict in 2014, and it was suicidal even then. The Ukrainians started to learn, and under the presidency of Petro Poroshenko, they actually started to cause major army reforms where Ukraine's military went from a conscript army to a contract army. It's sort of starting to go back into being a conscript army, though, with the war continuing on. But at the beginning of this war, of the invasion of 2022, they were a contract army, and they also started to rapidly adapt their doctrines and tactics so that way they would meet the requirements of a modern battlefield. And one of the main things they learned is that full-on attacks like this with armor units in broad daylight is 99% of the time a suicide mission. They will never make it to their actual objectives. Most of them will end up getting destroyed, and the infantry following behind them may as well be easy pickings for anything that may be near this battlefield. We can see this tank here completely missing its mark as well. It is firing at the road 20 meters in front of it where there is no Ukrainian forces. And we can also see that apparently a smoke grenade has been thrown by the infantry, which is now laying on the road, that the APC and the tank are backing down, and probably nobody even sees the infantry laying down. We can see over here as well more Russian APCs and tanks that are continuing to advance. It appears that this attack group is made up of 2 main battle tanks, 2 armored personnel carriers, maybe even a third one a little bit further back there, but we can't really tell because it's not zoomed in well enough. And who is Hoodoo Texas talking to? Ian Frogfish. Who the hell is Ian Frogfish? I've heard of Ian and Frogfish, but I've never heard of Ian Frogfish. Where is this? How can they be 2 years into a war and still attack like it's the 1950s? That's a good question, actually, Ian. That's actually a really good question. I would say they probably are just this is not like the incompetence on the level of the Army Corps. This is most likely incompetence on the level of a battalion commander or even a company commander, because this looks like it may be a company-sized element of a battalion tactical group conducting this assault. And I would have to say that is poor experience, poor knowledge, and poor planning on that company commander's end to try and conduct an attack like this. We can see that one of the BMPs appears to have already begun burning after it's been hit, and this APC has also been knocked out as well, leaving the infantry with really no way to evacuate off the field rather than just running. Mystical Slab Artist has to be baiting, man. I'm looking at that. I'm like, there's no way that that's real. He's baiting right now. Keep him in, because that was pretty funny. But anyways, so you can see the Russian tanks continuing to fire. It appears that one of the APCs has begun to burn quite nicely. The other one is actually still moving, even though it appears to have been hit just a moment ago. And Miss Deesa said, where do they run to? Probably back towards Novoprokopivka, but the chances of any of them making it back if the Ukrainians have artillery is going to be really low, because they're probably just going to dial the artillery ahead of them, leading the target, and then just drop a shell right in the middle of them and take most of them out.
Well, I think the guy's flying his drone's about to sacrifice it or something. It's nearly like out of battery.
Man, he's got to get that clip. That's it. He's like, I got to get this war-winning clip. I mean, you see the Russian squads with no grouping whatsoever, moving around, running around, really trying to figure out what to do. And we see that they brought out a new drone to see what's going on.
The one must have crashed.
That's it. No GPS, fly with caution. Man, that must be French for caution. But anyways, we can see the Russian infantry kind of gathering around this tank and possibly doing some kind of a ritual dance around it to try and bring it back. I don't think that's going to work. And Christian Cruz said, when the Russian army does the yearly drill, it looks exactly like this. It does. It's impressive for folks watching, but it doesn't make a lot of sense on the battlefield. I know, because I read books. That's just, some people are going to be like, you were never in the field. It's like, okay. It's like, you know, let's be honest here. Is a corporal going to know how a company unit, a company-sized unit is going to move? Probably not. Is a sergeant going to know? Maybe. Is a first sergeant going to know? Most likely. Will a company commander know? Of course he will. But on a corporal level, you know, probably about as abstract thinking as we're doing on this channel. So, anyways, we can see the Russians have now decided to just give up, and they're now going to start walking back to Novoprokopivka after most of their armor has been knocked out. Oh, wait a minute, they got the BMP up and running. It's actually scooting. And it looks like one T-72 may have even survived as well, although we did see them get hit a little bit earlier. But half of their attacking armor was wiped out. One APC and one MBT from what we can tell right now. That might change as the video goes on, but at the moment, they lost half of the armored forces, which is an abysmal loss rate for an attack like this. Honestly, in broad daylight, it's expected, but under ideal conditions for an offensive or an attack like this, these are abysmal losses. Wait, do we have a Korean bot? We do!
I think so. I said it real simple. I said, Ukraine win. Russia stop war. Yes?
It's literally Kim Jong-un here in the chat. He's in here. He's in here coping and seething because the shells he sent are subpar quality.
I'm sorry, Kim, but reading the manual on this one and, you know, breezing over it ain't going to help you very much. You're still going to lose and Russia's going to fail. It's over.
It's over, man. It's over, Kim. We have the high ground. And on top of that, we don't use those crappy lower receivers that North Korea has that are just absolute dog dookie.
And also, Kim isn't careful. We'll send in a battleship and block off the trade of Twinkies.
That's trade of Twinkies. I've never heard of that one. That's the Twinkie trade. That's like the silver exchange, the Twinkie exchange. But let's see.
That could be fatal if you cut off that supply to North Korea.
Dude, Kim Jong-un would go into diabetic shock and drop dead. Like, if there were no Twinkies, he would just drop dead from withdrawal. But, let's see. GW says it's Korean. There are circles. Circle. Oh, man, and there goes the remainder of their armor. It's just the one tank of the APC. It looks like they may have left the infantry behind, possibly, just to fend for themselves out there. Oh, wait a minute, it looks like the other BMPs somehow miraculously survived as well. And good job, Jonathan, on getting a new job. I hope you have a fun time with it. But look at Mystical Slab Bars. He went zzz. You see a little shell hit right there.
I said to that bot right there, I said, "You tired of something?"
Oh man, he tired of something. He want that heat. And Sapporo Traub said, "I'm pretty sure an American E4 has a better idea of company-sized maneuver than any non-NATO army, with exception of IDF." I have to tell you, I do have some friends, and I'm just saying this, based off of what I know. We do know people, Matthew and me both know people from our high school that ended up going into the armed services. And I have to be honest with you, some of them I'm pretty sure have absolutely no idea what a company level unit even is, even after being in there for like 2 years. That's why I say that with pretty good confidence, because some of them I'm like, goodness, I'm like, like y'all are really dropping the ball here, like even on what y'all need to know. And that always kind of, makes us go, but beyond that, there are a decent amount of competent E4s. I mean, even your junior non-commissioned officers are very intelligent as far as everything goes out there on the battlefield, even at the company level. But when you start getting into battalion level and even company level, it gets a lot more abstract than what a E4 or even an E5 is going to need to know on the field. They're more so going to be focused on a fire team. A corporal will certainly be focused on the fire team level, or the sergeant may even be focused on more so advising the second lieutenant on the squad level. They don't really have to focus on anything beyond the squad or even the platoon level, because it's just beyond their responsibility. So most of them will probably not know a great deal about what actually goes on at the company level, because it's just way above what they really need to know to be effective on the field. And also, in the end, the E4 Mafia, oh man, that's what really sucks, is something y'all may or may not know from around the world. Everyone who becomes a non-commissioned officer in the U.S. military, which is E5 or above, that's when you become a sergeant, you actually have to be approved to be a non-commissioned officer by Congress. And so the amount of E5s that get approved is somewhat low. So everyone kind of just ends up being an E4, which is a specialist, and then they just stay there forever until Congress finally approves them to become a non-commissioned officer. So that is a big thing, and we are being told that apparently someone has returned. Are you seeing this, man?
I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it.
I'm going to check. I'm going to look for the Warthog. And sadly, I'm not seeing it right now. So they're not back yet, but they may be back here in the future. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next bit of news, which is actually outside of the area of Robotny. It's time for us to move on up into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 661 of the war. And so,
give me some speech. Can I have some speech?
They have the translator. Oh God! Wait, here's the speech.
Brave Ukrainians.
Good evening, Ukrainians. I wish you well.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Провів ставку. Різні питання, різні аспекти оборони. Тривало майже 3 години. Питання військових, питання ветеранів, питання бригад, питання фортифікаційних укріплень, питання виробництва зброї. Окремо працюємо, щоб реалізувати всі наші домовленості з партнерами щодо нових виробництв зброї, спільних виробництв та спільної ремонтної бази. Завдання максимально посилити Україну, і кожен місяць має додавати сил нашій обороні. Я хочу зараз відзначити і наших захисників неба. Лише за одну минулу ніч вони знищили 30 шахедів, потужний результат, а загалом за цей тиждень знищено вже 104 шахеди зі 112 застосованих Росією. Більшість. І знищення кожного – це врятовані життя, врятована інфраструктура. Я дякую всім воїнам наших мобільних вогневих груп, льотчикам та інженерам повітряних сил та усім нашим зенітникам. Молодці. Були цього тижня і збиття ракет, зокрема балістичних, Петріоти, Насамс, Гепарди та інші системи, надані партнерами, працюють на відміну. Я дякую всім в світі, хто допомагає. Готуємо і подальше посилення ППО, про це вже домовились. І майже на кожній моїй зустрічі з лідерами, майже в усіх перемовинах звучить ця тема ППО. Буде більше систем, більше захисту неба. І ще одне. Різдво вже близько, і хоч в багатьох країнах політична активність знижується, Ми продовжуємо працювати максимально енергійно з усіма партнерами, які можуть допомогти зараз, які можуть підтримати у перспективі, і готуємо важливі зовнішньополітичні контакти до кінця року. Вся команда, наша команда, наших міжнародників працює 24/7. Я дякую кожному і кожній в державі, хто витримує такий же темп, хто не втомлюється захищати, працювати, допомагати. Слава усім, хто воює заради України, слава усім, хто забезпечує потрібний результат в кожній сфері, де нам так потрібна міцність. Слава нашому народу. Слава Україні.
And
Herom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 661 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And with that, we're now going to be moving on into the second part of this stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all about all the interesting things that are brought up on a nightly basis. We're going to get to talk to y'all about what y'all have asked, what y'all have spoken about, everything in between. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so moving into our final poll and question segment, our one and only poll says, which sniper rifle would you want as a Ukrainian sniper? 44% said the Barrett 50 cal, 27% said the Snipex Alligator, 21% said, I don't really know, and 8% said the Dragunov. And nobody, hardly anyone, wanted to touch the Dragunov. I really can't blame you, to be perfectly honest. But for me, I'd go with the Snipex Alligator because bigger is better when it comes to sniper rifles, in my opinion. And I want that big Alligator. I'm telling you, that thing's huge. It's like you need to carry it on the back of a truck. I really don't know how they're lugging it around the battlefield, but, you know, I guess they're strong. But I want that one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I want to be that Chad. Give me that damn 50 cal. Start carrying around the 40-pound rifle. I would go with the Barrett 50 cal as well, as it's called, the Barrett M82A1 semi-automatic anti-material rifle. A really cool little piece of work. And while the Snipex Alligator is neat, I feel like it's a little too big and probably a little bit too heavy. You pretty much have to be dropped off somewhere in a truck with that thing, and you're not really going to be carrying it much farther than there. So, in my personal opinion, Barrett 50 caliber M82, it's a little bit lighter, not that much. It's probably, I think, like 8 to 10 pounds lighter, which is a big thing, but, you know, when you're talking about numbers that big, it's not that great of a difference. The Dragunov, however, not really that big of a fan of them. Yes, they are pretty decent marksman rifles, but at the same time, you may as well be attached to an infantry squad, and by that point, I'd rather just have an AK or a machine gun or something similar, because I'm just not really a big fan of the idea of trying to do marksman shooting under firefight conditions. That just seems a little crazy to me. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank y'all, everyone, for voting on that. Nearly 700 of y'all voted on that. Very impressive number. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so we're now moving back into our Super Chat segment. And the first one is going to go to Steve T, who puts in two $25 donations. A huge shout out to Steve T, who is a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much once again for that support. The first one he put in says, how successful were the Ukrainian drones hitting aircraft, infrastructure, manufacturing, communications, fuel, logistics, or all? And nice to see them creating noise in Russia.
And thank you so much for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, Steve, that is a very interesting question. Sadly, we don't really know at the moment. The Russians kind of keep that information on the down low, and we don't really get a lot of updates or info on what's going on or what kind of damage was really caused by the attacks. So sadly, at the moment, we don't know. We do know that the air defense was activated in several oblasts on the Ukrainian border, which tells us that apparently it was a pretty sizable attack, but the actual extent of the damage will probably be known by tomorrow. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Steve. And with that, I hope we were able to address it fairly well. And we are going to be moving on to the next one. I have to say, Matthew, this next one is an unbelievable surprise, because I swore that last night they said that that was their last Super Chat of the year, and here they are again. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the next one is going to go to Walter A. Lakota Jr., who throws in a $200 donation. And good Lord, thank you, Walter, very much. He is coming in strong with support once again, and apparently he is once again on the S&P 500 trying to buy some stock. And thank you very much, Walter. He says, aloha, Enforcer Matt, and LS8 from OG Ellison Bosun. And last Hawaii fun fact for the year, And I guess he's for real this time. He says Sand Island in Honolulu Harbor was used as a Japanese internment camp in World War II. It opened in December of 12th of 1941 and housed up to 5,000 to 15,000 Japanese at its highest. Aloha and mele
Kalikamaka. Meli Kalikamaka.
Mele Kalikamaka.
Hey! And let's get it! And thank you so much for the support. The massive amount of support, Walter A. Lakota, an absolute channel legend, in helping us keep this thing rolling. Now, looking at Sand Island, it appears to now be a wastewater treatment plant, and also a couple of other things. But at one point, this was where an internment camp was for Japanese Americans during the Second World War, which is a little bit of a dark time in this nation's history, because we ended up pretty much suspending the rights of American citizens because we were scared that they may end up working alongside the Japanese. That actually was, interestingly enough, something that was a big concern at the time, due to something that happened during the Pearl Harbor attack on December 7th, which was called the Nihal incident, which happened in the islands of Hawaii, where a Japanese pilot ended up crashing. I believe it was on one of the more obscure islands of the Hawaiian island chain. I'd have to go back and look at it specifically, but a pilot ended up crashing on one of these islands. The locals ended up holding the guy inside of a shed with the hopes that the Navy would drop by with a patrol boat the next day, pick the guy up, and bring him to the mainland to Hawaii, so that way he would be put in a prisoner of war camp. But the Japanese Americans on the island actually ended up overpowering the other villagers there and ended up freeing the Japanese American, but he ended up being killed a little bit later on. However, that actually ended up being one of the main things that was brought up in Congress about the possibility of Japanese Americans, because all of these Japanese American citizens on this island during the Nihal incident were second and third generation Japanese Americans and actually had no direct connections to the Empire of Japan. And so it was actually talked about in Congress that these citizens may possibly, with no actual connection to Japan rather than their ancestral connection, may end up working for the Japanese. And that was considered to be such a fear at the time, they ended up violating every single one of the Japanese American citizens' rights and ended up putting almost all of them into internment camps. Some of them still would end up serving in the U.S. military with great distinction and honor, specifically in the European and Pacific theaters, both in some instances. And that is something of a very weird and very dark note in America's history, but very interesting one as well to go back and look at, because it's one of those times where you're like, you would think that they would have respected the rights of American citizens, considering that they were American citizens through and through, but yet they didn't. And also, Walter A. Lakota gave us a correction. It is to the west of, I think it is this island, right? Yeah, it is. Here's Nihal Island, where the Nihal incident happened. There's almost nobody who lives on this island as well. Even back then, I think there was like 60 people who lived on the island. It was in a very small village. It's this one right here, actually. And so the pilot ended up crash landing somewhere near the village, and then he was taken prisoner, and that's when the whole incident happened. But a very interesting story, because that was really the catalyst for the internment of Japanese Americans in the United States during the war. But nevertheless, really cool little fun fact to share with us. Probably, well, not cool, but a very interesting fun fact to share. And I thank you so much, once again, for being the OG LSM Bosun and the massive amount of support, and also sharing a really cool fun fact about Hawaii, specifically the main island of Oahu. Well, at least where most Hawaiians live, on the island of Oahu. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, and also for addressing another interesting and darker part of the United States history. And so with that, hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one was that second super chat from Steve T, who says, Enforcer, this is challenge accepted for your bagpipe solo of that song, and you won't do it for even the 25. So if you don't donate the 25, and he puts in the face with the tongue out.
Yeah. But thank you so much for the support, Steve T. And challenge accepted for your bagpipe solo of that song. I probably will have to end up throwing that into the that 25 into the Sunday fundraiser tomorrow, because it turns out I do not have a practice channel to play it on. So if I did it, it would be full blaring noise in the middle of the night. And bagpipes are incredibly loud. They're very loud, and I would hate to do that. at the time of night we're doing it, because I'd be waking up the dogs. They'd be scared. And also, on top of that, I would be waking up probably everyone else in the house who is sleeping. So, sadly, very sadly, I would not be able to do that. But I will make sure to throw in that 25 on the Sunday fundraiser tomorrow. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and making sure to put in a 25 at the Sunday fundraiser tomorrow. Considering you're from New Zealand, I think your local laws don't allow you, so that's a pretty smart move, pretty smart one. But with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, also known as Sarge, who puts in a $20 donation and said, "Good evening, gents. Long day today, writing up lesson plans for after winter break. Today I wrote up lesson plans for the Korean War, which one of my godfathers, one of my grandfathers was a veteran of, as well as World War II. Signal Corps."
Yeah, with godfathers in that message, you sit there, you go, "Hello, Corporal," and the Corporal pulls out a ring, "Kiss the ring. I'm going to give you an offer you can't refuse."
You think I'm here to play around with you or something, punk?
Oh, that's Al Pacino. I was about to be like, oh. But let's see. Let's see. Here, evening, gents. A long day writing. Today I wrote up lesson plans for the Korean War. Oh man, I thank you so much for teaching the Korean War. Because it's so undersung of a war. It's right after World War II, so usually there's like this World War II fatigue in the history class. And Korea, honestly, rather than the aircraft, the Sabres and the F-80s and all that, really on the ground, it was almost a repeat of World War II with the equipment we were using. There was very few things, seldom things that we were not using in World War II by 1945 that ended up not being used in Korea. So thank you for sharing that with me. I'd love to know that you're teaching the Korean War era history. And also, really cool to hear that one of your grandfathers was a veteran as well as being a veteran of the Second World War. That is very interesting, because apparently I'm guessing that your grandfather was one of those guys who ended up probably getting drafted in World War II, ended up actually liking the service, and then just decided to extend his, well, not to extend his contract, he didn't have one, but once his conscription or draft was over, he just then re-enlisted into the military and just continued to stay. So apparently he liked it or enjoyed it or something, to be in World War I and World War II, or he was a career soldier beforehand. Nevertheless, really cool, because there weren't really a lot of career soldiers before World War II. The army was actually significantly small. But nevertheless, really cool to hear. And thank you once again for support. And a huge shout out to the Signal Corps. Wave those flags, get the Morse going, and ring up them radios, because the Signal Corps are the folks to get those jobs done and also lay down the wires for them. But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jason Carpenter, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jason, for that support. He says, "Hi, guys, and great show tonight. And down with mainstream media, y'all say rules. And also, question from the chat, please."
Hey, let's get it, baby! And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is great to know that folks like you, Jason Carpenter, have been with us for such a long time. And not only that you like to see the mainstream media come down. Mainstream media is something that is a little bit out there and kind of common. And, you know, I gotta be honest with y'all. It's something that has been, I'll be honest with y'all. The term mainstream media appears to have been, still used the most by Fox News in particular. But what I find so ironic about that is, based off of the ratings and the viewership, Fox News is the most mainstream news network out of them all by a long shot. Their viewership, I think it beats out CNN, MSNBC, and ABC combined. If you put their ratings together, you get Fox News. And that's always so funny to me, because they're like, "We're not the mainstream news." I'm like, you literally are the definition of mainstream news. You're the largest one out there. Like, what are you talking about? And they're not even really news. Like, they just say news, but whenever they go into a lawsuit, they're like, we're not news, we're entertainment. And it's like, well, what are you then? Like, are you news? Are you entertainment? What am I watching? Like, what is this? Honestly, it's all garbage. Whether it be Fox,
Fake
CNN,
news,
ABC, all of it's absolute bull. And, oh, no way, Duncan VR's here. But before we get on to that, because that was a shock, I was like, what? But before we get on to that, I thank you so much for enjoying this channel, because we try not to be like the mainstream news outlets, like Fox, like CNN, like MSNBC, like ABC, like any of them. They're all garbage. They all just say what they can to get AdSense, which really everyone kind of turns out to do. And I say AdSense, but ad money. Really, everyone ends up doing that. YouTubers do that. We try not to. That's why we don't have ads on the stream or sponsors, so that we were not motivated by them. And instead, we're motivated by y'all's raw appreciation for the show and y'all's will to keep it running. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and the kind words, and also encouraging us to continue our fight, no matter how small the channel may be in reality compared to those major news networks, to keep on getting the news out there to y'all. And I thank you so much once again for that. And the LSA does rule. And we will make sure to take a question from the chat. And so what do we got, Matthew?
And a question from the chat goes to Julian Britt, who says, can a U.S. citizen own an artillery gun, an anti-tank gun, or even an anti-aircraft gun at all?
Yes, you can. You actually can. And you can get I believe that is a destructive device license, or something along those lines that you would have to get to own one, but you technically can. There is a D30, and make sure I'm saying that correct. A D30. Oh, no, I think it's actually a D20. Let me check. Yes. There is at least one D20 that I know of that's privately owned here in the United States. You may have seen this being used on channels like Brandon Herrera and others. But yeah, there is actually a private-owned artillery piece here in America. Problem is, though, is that the shells that they fire actually are considered destructive devices as well. Like, you can't just buy a high-explosive artillery shell. You have to get a tax stamp for that thing and wait about 8 months to a year for that to go through, and then you can buy it, and then you get it. So every single time you fire this thing, you also have to do a lot of paperwork because the destructive device is destroyed, so you have to let the ATF know about that. It's a whole ordeal, but technically you can end up owning an artillery piece, an anti-aircraft gun. You can end up owning a fully operational tank with an operational main gun as well if you want to. The only thing is that you can only keep it on your private property. You can't transport it, like, you can't drive it down the highway or the interstate or anything like that. It will only be on your private property, but technically you can own any of those things. You just have to go through the proper tax stamp and all that stuff. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Really interesting live chat question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have yet another super chat from Walter A. Lakota Jr., who throws in a 20 this time. And thank you, Walter, once again. And he says, it's me again. And a World War II fun fact. The U.S. Merchant Marine had the high death casualties, and the second was the Marines.
Merchant, one second, I want to pull this up. Merchant Marine casualties, World War II. Let's see. So, 9,521 merchant mariners lost their lives, a higher proportion than those killed in any military branch, according to the National World War II Museum. Insane when you think about it, and also showing the bravery of merchant mariners to go out to sea, knowing the danger that lied ahead of them in particular.
Why are they getting slaughtered like that, though?
You know, U-boats, U-boats, submarines, air attacks in the earlier part of the war. I mean,
Jeez.
like, it was brutal to be in the Merchant Marine. And what's so sad is Walter E. Lakota has actually talked about this before on stream, but the Merchant Marine actually was very close. It pretty much was a part of the Department of War or the Department of Defense for a good while. But then I think it was around the 60s, they ended up pretty much just severing the Merchant Marine from it even being considered anything close to martial in nature. And so they've ended up kind of going into obscurity in the modern world. But they were such an integral part of the maritime world here in the United States up until that point. And it's crazy to think that the Merchant Marine was one of those groups was the group that took the highest casualties by proportion than any other military branch out there, which is absolutely insane to think about. And also, huge shout out to you, Walter A. Lakota, because you are a modern living example of someone in the Merchant Marine. And that is really cool to know that we actually have Merchant Marines like you, Walter, that watch this channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to talk about cool things like the Merchant Marine. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Duncan VR, who throws in a 15. And it's good to see you once again, Duncan. And he says, Achtung, Geschichte vergleichen, 1800, no respect. Now talk to Kermit. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Zoiksku. For the nitric acid coke fund.
Oh, legend!
Oh my. Oh my.
Oh my. And I gotta say, wow. Achtung, Geschlechtverleihungen in der deutschen Volken. Say, but anyways, oh man, I'm telling you, I get a respect around here. And I talk to camera, and oh man, I'm telling you, like, Zoink Scoob, I think those were Russians. And also,
oh, Raggy.
Oh, that's like Zoink Scoob, I think it's missing an extra. But anyways, thank you so much for the support to the Nitric Acid Coke Fund. And of course, Bakhmut. And thank you, Duncan VR, for being here with us tonight. We haven't seen you for a while, and it is great to have you back. It's absolutely wonderful to have you back. And I hope that you've been having a good time, wherever you may have been. And I hope that you stay with us for quite a while. And so thank you so much once again. Thank you. And of course, folks like you help to make this channel possible. And thank you once again for allowing us to cut loose and be crazy, you know? Absolutely wilding. Something that other people just don't do. Other people hide it under excessive amounts of booze and drugs, but no. I believe in doing it sober. It's a much more refreshing experience. But still, with that, thank you so much once again, and thank you, White Wolf, for putting in all of those LSAs. That's a spamming I can accept right there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Herp Derp in V. And thank you very much, Herp Derp, for the support. They said, I got another Google Street View hood request with a house that has its own double layer cope cage. This is an exact address. This is sketching me out a little bit. Whose address is this exactly, Herp Derp?
We're going there. We're going there. All right.
Oh, so, he's pulling it up right now.
Let's see. We in Philadelphia near Kensington. Oh yes. Yes, this is the hood. Like, no question. It's near Kensington. This is a famous hood throughout the country. But
yes, we went to your hood.
Polish kielbasa. Well, we're going to check that out in a little bit because I want to see what Polish food looks like. But let's drop down here. We're going to drop down right here. All right. Ooh. Oh. Wait a minute. Where did it go? Where did it go? All I did was click out of that thing at the top. All right. Oh my goodness!
There's that guy riding a bicycle. Is a little bit too small for him.
Yes. The opposite of Mr. Beast. Mr.
Wait a minute, his name was Bully?
Wait,
his name was literally Bully?
Oh wait, this is an RIP mural in memory of thing. I don't even know what that says. Do y'all know what that says? Turn around
and turn to the left. There was a dude riding a bicycle. It was a little too small.
Dude, that's like a bike for like a 6-year-old kid, man. Like right there.
Yeah, I can't. This guy's confusing. You can't tell if he's like 6 years old or 30. You really can't tell.
Man, what the hell is going on around here? Now this is giving Detroit a run for its money. I'm not even kidding. Dude, look at the bars. Dude, like you come down this street, people aren't spitting bars. They're putting up bars. Like this is just nothing but wrought iron bars everywhere down the street. It looks...
You know it's a rough neighborhood when the Google Maps car causes people to get scared, like the lady trying to get in the door right there, turning around looking like it's about to be a shooting or something happening.
Oh my goodness, dude. Wow. Yeah, this is rough. Look, you can even see the outline of the stairwell on the side of this building.
Damn.
It's rough. You know it's bad when you can see that. But let's see here. Dang. This is rough. But let's see here. Let's move down the street a little bit further. Very interesting, this. Okay, we got a shrooms. Oh, restrooms. I was like, shrooms. I was like, I don't think this is a good sign. But let's see here. What else do we have? Okay, we have an abandoned factory. We're in a good spot. We have a Vanessa Beauty Salon. Walk-ins, welcome.
It's also for sale by owner.
Oh, apparently I'm not walking in there. But anyways, what's on this side of the street?
You're walking in, but you ain't walking out.
Man, it's just... Oh, wait, what's over here? Junk cars up to $300. Damn, $300. Very impressive. And let's see here. What does this say? De pollo y carne. So it's some kind of a food thing right there.
Oh, they're selling some of those tacos, those bussin' kind.
Man, you know, those kinds of slap. Wait a minute, is that another mural for the same guy? In memory of Richie Bitch.
That's what I thought it said too.
Yeah, it literally says Richie Bitch. Dude.
And the dude's looking like I don't know, has he got one eye open or closed? I mean, the guy is passed away, so I guess he does what it is with that mural.
The way that wow, the way that ended, the wrap up.
I
to
didn't
that.
know that. I didn't know how far I could go with that one. I'm just gonna pass.
Flawless finish. That's all I have to say. But it looks like they're renovating this building.
Oh, that's a winner.
Yeah, so you can look right down this street and watch the shootings. Apparently, because I'm telling you what, with this many bars down the street, there has to be a lot of crime. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But what's even wilder is like some of them don't look bad. Like this one's got like a brand new paint job and everything. It looks pretty nice, but like it's like a hit or a miss with these houses. Like goodness gracious. Pretty rough.
Literally a hit or a miss. Like when the last shooting happened through here, it was a hit or a miss, and a lot of hits.
A lot of hits. Gotta tell you, a lot of hits. But let's see here. Let's see here. We got Bethel Bienvenidos. Okay, so what was on this telephone pole here? We got to take a look at that. All right, so we got junk cars. Cash, $215. They're being upsold by the other people. Junk car, $500. Top dollar for junk cars. Apparently, the only economy in this area is just junk cars. Like, if you have anything else rather than junk cars, like, I don't know, money, forget it. Junk cars is where it's at. That's the only thing you're selling here in Kensington, in Philadelphia. But let's see what else they got. Okay, so we got a modern-ish looking building just kind of sitting there, and then it goes into abandoned factories again. You can tell, I can tell you this, I know why this happened to Philadelphia, specifically Kensington. Apparently all of their industry moved out elsewhere, and the local economy was just devastated because the entire thing probably revolved around that. That's what I would put money on, just seeing what this place looks like. But terrible. This is terrible to see. But speaking of which,
it's so bad that they literally call it Philadelphia.
I think a lot of big cities are starting to get that kind of a rap. And also, not really a lot of them have moved on well from the industrial era that a lot of them were in, like Detroit and Philadelphia. A lot of these were very big industrial centers of manufacturing, and after that moved on abroad mostly, they're ending up to being in some very rough spots. Doesn't mean that the industry is gone. Sometimes it just ended up moving to places like here in Alabama, because Alabama, I think, is like the 4th largest car manufacturer in the entire United States. And if you ever drive out into the countryside, you will just see these giant factories, like a Toyota factory or a Mercedes factory, but they're not in the cities anymore. And a lot of them have also just moved abroad to places like China or Mexico or Vietnam, as one of them. But absolutely unfortunate to see.
It's kind of weird, like people sleep on Alabama, but it's really got like a lot of stuff like the car manufacturing, the defense agencies. Like I think the FBI headquarters is being built in Huntsville, I believe. Then you got the Redstone Arsenal, all the military bases. Maxwell's like the place where all the pilots get trained, I believe, or at least a cyber center or something like that. It's like Alabama's got a lot of big stuff in it for it to be called the like backward state.
Yeah, and then we have nuclear power plants. I think we have 5 whole reactors inside of our state, although 3 of them are kind of, a little questionably managed, but, we'll leave that for what it is. Southern Company actually does a great job of the Farley power plant. I got to say, there has been literally no safety reports that have come back with any kind of a complaint on them from Farley, which is unheard of, actually, in most nuclear power plants, because usually, like, a light will be flickering, and something like that is actually will go down on a report as something wrong with the power plant. The Farley power plant has never even had a report like that. It is literally spotless, running record from, like, the late 70s up till today. That is unheard of. But let's check out this Polish kielbasa place, because I'm interested. Oh, they got pierogies! A legend!
Oh!
And sosog. Beautiful. And they got a little man. Get it, little man! Oh, there's a little piggy. Look at that, it's Russian. But anyways, they also got more sosog. Dude, the sausages look pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. And we can see the pig again. And we can see the inside. Dude, this looks like somewhere from our old town, man. Like our old hometown. Like, it looks like one of the restaurants there. And look at that. Just loads and loads of patties. Sausage, more sausage. Dude, this place is traditional, man. Like, this place is
they have
like...
a sausage hanging on the rack.
Dude, that's literally what, like, the 3 Little Piggies cartoon looked like when they said father and they had the picture up. That's father. Look, it's dead. But let's see. Man... this looks like...
that pig keeps like teleporting around the shop, like he keeps getting inside, outside, everywhere.
Dude, the pig's like, I smell you.
That pig's looking a little sly, like the bombastic side-eye.
Bombastic. But let's see here. What are the reviews?
They
of this
literally looks like they went to a flea market, found that pig there, and they're like, "We can put one of our store shirts on that pig," and then they just like start carrying it around everywhere.
Dude, look at this, man, and it's got unbelievable reviews. It's got 1,086 reviews with 4.9 stars. This has to be the place for Polish food in the entire United States. But apparently this guy was not pleased, the local guide. But everyone else, very pleased by this place. And I would have to go with the general consensus. 4.9 stars for this place, not that bad. I would go up here and eat at this place. Hell, maybe one day when we go around and if we ever look at U.S. cities, maybe we will drop by Philadelphia. And if you watch this channel, maybe we'll get to meet all of you. And maybe we'll all take a trip in Kensington together because it's safer in numbers. But anyways, with that, thank you so much for the support and sharing with us. Kensington in Philadelphia. A very interesting hood review. I have to say, though, that... Wait a minute, did I really just say that? We're running on empty. Hood review. And here we are in Kensington, Philadelphia. I don't think anything's like beat Detroit so far because Detroit was a trip. I don't think we could get any better than Detroit with the biggie bags and like everything abandoned and rotting, and then the RIP t-shirt store being like the only thing open for like 3 miles straight on that highway. I don't think we can beat that, but we're getting kind of close. But with that, hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for giving us a hood recommendation. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from Ari Soini yet again, who says, would you do comparison of different NATO rifles when you incorporate that into your stream?
Amazing question. The answer is yes. We may do gun reviews comparing different kinds of guns from the NATO nations. We have ended up being able to get our hands on at least some of the older variants that would have been used in the Cold War. We will be able to review the M14 battle rifle, the FAL, the G3, the M16, and also the AK-47, although ours is a Polish variant, and the AK-74. So we have everything from the Cold War. It's just... we don't really have a lot from the modern era, like the G36 or the L85. We're going to have to really work hard to get our hands on something like an L85 or a FAMAS or a G36. Really difficult to get your hands on one of those in the United States to review because not a lot of them exist. And also usually when they do, they're part of like an army proving ground somewhere, and we would have to really get up there, really high up there on the YouTube world to be able to get our hands on stuff like that. But nevertheless, I would love to do that. We can talk about Cold War era rifles, but modern NATO rifles will probably be a little bit later down the road. But I would love to do it. I'm not going to turn down anything on guns. Y'all could ask us to review anything. Colt pocket pistols, we'll do it. Vest pocket pistols, we'll do it. We'll do concealed carry pistols, full-size pistols, way more than full-size pistols like 44 Magnums and 50 A&E. We'll do literally anything as long as we are able to find a way to get it and be able to review it. But that's the problem, is being able to find them and review them. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Ed, who puts in a 7 and says, Irish Ed here, and my bro Irish Mike lived Navy forever. He told me he was on the USS Sentry, the MCM-3, wood hull, demining around Iran. And what say you? Wood?
No. I would not be on a wooden boat demining anything. But it's smart. Boats that are minesweepers are actually not made of steel because most of the mines are magnetic and are attracted to steel hulls. They try to get rid of that by degaussing the hull a great deal on most steel-hulled ships. But at the same time, most minesweepers are made out of something else like wood or fiberglass, so that way they don't have that issue. And they're able to just sneak right up on the mines and then defuse them and get rid of them. But I would hate to do that. I would hate the idea of being on a minesweeper. It's just like a nightmare to me, because if you screw up, you just get blown up. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because there's folks like you who helped to make this thing possible, and a really cool story as well to hear. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And the next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a 5 and says, take a live chat question. And let's go ahead and grab that live chat question, and it's going to go to Barry Woodward, who says, any details on the forthcoming Ukraine counterattack?
The forthcoming Ukraine counterattack, we currently don't have any details at the moment. We're hearing like rumors that Ukrainian forces are moving around, but we really don't know where, and we really don't know what they're going to be doing either. So we've heard that there's possibly a fourth counteroffensive coming, but we don't know enough about it beyond that to say anything more. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat well, and thank you so much for sponsoring it. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Blue Flam 777 LSA, who puts in a 5. It says, what's more fun than eating a mandarin? Eating Amanda ERT. Any question to chat?
And thank you so much for the support, Blue Flam 777. I gotta be honest with you. Eating a mandarin? I don't know. I mean, like, you know, I guess, you know, eating a mandarin's not that bad. Back in the day in school, we used to have these mandarins, little tiny mandarins, called cuties. And that is such a weird name for a brand. Like, it's like, I don't know about that anymore, especially with, you know, how things have changed for that word. It's like, I don't know about calling it that. But nevertheless, mandarin's not bad. I can get behind it. Orange juice, I can get behind that even more. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one. What we got, Matthew?
And guess what? Our question from the live chat is actually going to be our Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we have Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Benu, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Rumpelstiltskin, Toxic Bananas, Tightlines LSO, and David Millsaps. These are tonight's Morse reads. The Russians are about to be chopping up the old Lada for some extra tank armor. Long live the LSA, Slava Ukraine, and Slava LSA.
And that's the sound of money. And y'all got that down now. That was the Morse code message tonight. I got to congratulate y'all for getting it right for so many days in a row. It's amazing to know, and I thank y'all greatly. And of course, it is folks like you who make that Morse code message possible day in and day out. It is day 661. We're 5 days away from that dreaded day where the numbers all line up. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, I think we're on into the live chat questions proper.
All right, and moving into our first live chat question, the first one goes to Anthony, not Anthony, it's actually another nice guy. And he says, do you think that the Ukrainians are playing down their position so as to be underestimated?
No, I don't think so. Usually when statements like these are made, they are made with pure intention. Nobody ever wants to look weak if they don't have to. And trying to guise yourself to look weak doesn't really do much for morale either in your home country. So those statements by the Ukrainians where they're saying things aren't really going that great on the support side of things, those are being completely honest, because otherwise they wouldn't be saying them. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Terrence Custer, who says, does the Dnieper River freeze enough to support heavy equipment driving across it?
Sadly, no. Sadly, the Dnieper River actually does not freeze, because usually the currents are moving quick enough that the water never sits still for long enough to create a solid ice cover. So, sadly, if you ever want to cross the Dnieper River, you will have to create a bridge crossing or ford the river with some kind of a pontoon sort of transport system. So sadly, not possible. Wish it was, though, because it would make things a lot easier, but it will probably never happen in our lifetime. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Kibo57, who says, I saw a video that was saying that Britain may soon be sending soldiers into Ukraine, and what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, they're not doing that.
Oh,
silly goose. They're not doing that. That'd be pretty much a direct involvement of the war. They get sent in like advisors. We've done that. We actually have them in Ukraine right now. But actual soldiers fighting on the front lines, probably not possible. Probably never going to happen. But advisors and soldiers like that, yeah, they could do that. And they actually did talk about that a while ago. We made a video on that, I think like 3-4 months ago at this point. They were talking about it back then. So it's always on the table, but we never really see it happening, Governor. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And I think, Matthew, if I'm correct, are we on to the final question of the night so I can do my spiel?
I believe we are.
And so, with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person throwing the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Barry Woodward, who says, does the enforcer think that the Allied naval forces enter the Red Sea area to enforce free travel of civilian cargo or to coordinate a leveling, and I mean a leveling, of Yemen Houthi forces?
I would say we should level the Houthi forces. I think that would be a good message to send, and not only that, it would start to restore stability to such a vital trade route area in the world. Most of the world's trade, I think it's something like 60% of it at this point, travels in through the Indian Ocean and through the Mediterranean. It is a massive amount, and to have such an unstable terrorist force literally bordering the southern part of the Red Sea, where there really is no option to get any additional distance from the coast, for that to happen, that is uncalled for, and I think it requires a very strong and firm response by a Western coalition to crush these Houthi forces and once again restore stability to these vital trade routes. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I have to thank all of y'all so much once again for watching. It has been an absolute honor getting to run this stream for all of y'all tonight. If y'all have enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because these streams run every single day of the week except for Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, covering the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine in picture and video evidence, just like you saw tonight. Of course, I thank you all so much once again. Good night, good luck, stay safe, take care, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow for the fundraiser stream, and thank you all once again for another good one. And Slava Ukraine, Heroes Slava, and
Yes.
Good night.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.